just past the airport with significant hail. And we're talking about tennis ball to baseball sized hail. Among other things, we're also looking at the potential for tornadoes later on to the south. You'll see where some of this really large hail is. So if you're in Florissant, you're north of 270, anywhere around here, really anywhere in St. Louis County, if you have your car outside and you're on the leading edge of the storm, I'd like you to take care. You're also seeing probably more of that right now with this area right now, specifically around Villa Ridge and Gray Summit, south of Augusta. That's another large area of hail. And even as I just queue up some of the minor rotation, that's what we're going to watch out for the rest of the day here once again. So those are the two significant factors here as we're still under this tornado watch until 11 o'clock tonight. You'll see that tornado warning that's well to the south right now. That's a favorable area south of 44, as this is a particularly dangerous situation, tornado watch until 11 o'clock. No active tornado warnings just yet. You'll notice here, though, there are many areas that are involved in any of these polygons that have the potential to up to tennis ball to baseball sized hail. So as we continue to monitor this threat here, in fact, now we have our new tornado warning, so we're going to stay on with you. I'm sorry about the race. It's one of those deals. We're going to get back to you. But it's this one specifically, and you can kind of see where this hook is that's starting to settle in. This is going to send many of the areas, including St. Louis County, as we continue to monitor this trend. Right now, this is our latest tornado warning. This is until 6 o'clock. Yes, please. That'll work for us here. Tornado warning for Franklin, Jefferson, and St. Louis County here until 6 o'clock. So myself here and Chief Meteorologist Scott Connell will continue to track this area for you. But right now, as I continue to look at this specific area, this is where the potential for this tornado is right now. And I would say it's right around Labadee. In fact, it's right just south of St. Albans here. My friends here right on Franklin County and St. Louis County line. That's where we're dealing with this. And this is an area right around Highway T that you're not going to be able to see this specifically very well, just because there's bluffs, there's a two-lane road, there's no way to pull off. This is one way, and this is the direction now. It's just south of Labadee. So this is just south of Highway T. This is right off of T and 100 here. So you're looking, as you go from the split from St. Albans Road to 100, you're going all the way past here. This is a little bit further south from 100. This is just past Fox Creek Veterinary here, just past 100. That's probably as far away as you go here, Scott. And those are the things that we're going to look at. And it's this here, right about here, I would say, as we're going to circle this. This is obviously an area that we're looking at as far as the rotation is, Scott, because there's nowhere to pull out. It's tough to see. There's bluffs, as you know. I'm a person who drives that road pretty frequently, and that's tough to see out there.
Yeah, and so you can see how this is hooking here. And so that's where our rotation is. I'm going to add in the velocity here. Well, nope, I'm not. Maybe I will. We'll pop this on. And you can see that's right where the circulation is showing up. And if we do a track on that, and Gary, I think I'm in your show.
Yeah.
So
let me get it. We can get, I'm on 2, so I can, we can switch it over. But I'm just going to continue to monitor this while you get that settled in. If you want to get that tooled in and be prepared. But this is obviously an area I'm a little familiar with, being around there often. But what we continue to look at here right now specifically is this. It's this right here, this velocity. This is toward and away from the radar here. And as I zoom in just a little bit more, what you're going to see here is that's the area specifically toward and away from the radar here, south of St. Albans, off of 100 and Highway T. That's right before the split here, south of 100, as we continue to monitor that threat here. And I know that I have 1 behind me, so there we go. Scott's moving that one. But it's this one right here between 100, this particular area right here. This is away from the radar. This is toward the radar. This is the reason for the tornado warning right now. This is a radar-indicated tornado with an area of rotation. We have a lot of other signatures here. And just from telling you, you're not going to pull up a bunch of things here, but obviously Ellisville is one of the spots here. But just from being around this area, right here at the intersection of Manchester and Highway T, that's where, just south of where this is running here, right before 109, and this is another area, as you know, from Eureka High School all the way up to Wildwood. So you go past YMCA, you go to the high school, you go here where the Deerbergs or the Schnucks is, right next to where the the Breadco is. Sorry, that's the Kansas City coming out of me here. But you know, that's the drive that you're not going to be able to see any of this because it's a 2-lane road. It already is dangerous enough as it is when it's raining, but you're not going to be able to see where this rotation is here at this moment. So that's the most significant thing, is it's north of 44. So anywhere between Wildwood, you're talking about Eureka, you're talking about Wildwood Town Center here, from Baldwin into Valley Park, really north of there. That's the significant area where we're watching this area of rotation. So right now it's just north of Manchester here as we continue to move over here. And that's what we're going to look at here over the next few minutes as we're involved in that tornado warning. So yeah, so
I got on max.
Perfect. So as we continue to look ahead to what's going on here at the moment, that's the area that we're going to monitor as far as any sort of issue here at the moment. That's the area that is still right now as far as being that area of rotation, Scotty. We're just kind of.
That's where the storm is hooking, and we actually have it here with a timeline for you. Ellisville, 528, Baldwin, 531, Manchester, 534. Again, that circulation's here right along Highway 100, and so it's about ready to cross out of Franklin County into far western portions of St. Louis County, and it does cross Highway 109, and as Gary was talking about, this area out here, there's a lot of forested area. You're going to be looking, you know, in a situation out here where, you don't get the chance to see this, and you don't want to see it. So you want to be in your safe place. That's as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Basement is best in this particular scenario, but if you don't have a basement available, then you want to go to the lowest floor of whatever building you're in and put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. A bathroom, a closet, those are safe places to be. Again, that rotation tightening up here, we saw it with the hook just a few minutes ago, and because of that, that's why this system has prompted the National Weather Service to issue this tornado warning here, as this storm is actually hooking down into far eastern portions right along Highway 100. You're pretty close. That hooked pretty close right over that Bowles fire station that's there, right off Highway 100. Now, we broaden out that view a little bit. This warning does include northern portions of Jefferson County, and it does include St. Louis County as well. So we are, at this point, continuing to track this storm, and this isn't the only severe thunderstorm that we have to track with this afternoon. There are several severe thunderstorms that are moving through the area, and some of them have baseball or tennis ball size hail with them as they've been moving through. So we kind of broaden this view out. You have one sliding through towards St. Louis, North St. Louis County. This area is getting large hail right now, north of 270, up towards Lindbergh and 367. That's going to move into Madison County. This storm has prompted the tornado warning because it's hooking here, and you have that rotation, that very tight rotation that's showing up right there in this vicinity here, very close to the Franklin County line and very close to the Highway 100, right over Highway 100, where we're looking at that. And that is coming into Wildwood. It could track over Baldwin. Valley Park, you're in the warning. Eureka, you're in the warning. Anywhere out here near Hidden Valley, these are the areas where you need to be in your safe shelter right now and making sure that you are staying protected from this scenario, because there is a radar indicated tight circulation in an environment that is favorable for severe thunderstorms and tornadoes this afternoon. So a lot of warnings going on, Gary, here as we continue to track these storms through the area. Yeah,
probably the first of many, as we know, Scott, and that's kind of what we've once again been dealing with. And this is a pretty serious weather situation. These are not just the brief type of spin-up tornadoes that we're going to monitor here. So at this moment, we still have a tornado watch, a particularly dangerous situation, tornado watch until 11 o'clock. And no, we're not cutting into the Indy 500 because of that. We've got significant 70+ mile-an-hour wind, and we have one active tornado warning right now. And that's part of St. Louis County. That's also into Franklin County as well. And you'll be able to see that here right now, as I want to show you the wide area of where this polygon is, that we go from Wildwood to Eureka. And it's really this specific specific spot here on 109 as we monitor this area right now. And I want to show you where this toward and away from the radar rotation is and just kind of look at some of the roads here. This is really down Manchester on 100 and just kind of showing you and giving you an idea of where some of the potential for this rotation is as we look at each continuing at least zoomed out just a little bit. It's this area right about here that's right along 100, between 100 and 109, and I'll zoom back into this here, and I want to show you where this is because this is the area specifically that we're dealing with when it comes to where this is moving here as I move this back out. The back edge of this, where we have some of the wind that's settling in, and we're still having, it's, I would say right now that it's moving for me correctly, right now between 100, like I mentioned, this is where probably the biggest burst of wind is, and you can kind of see this right now from 100. Watch this bright color area here. That's where we're really seeing some strong wind, and as we continue to monitor this, we're on 100, and that's where I want to look at where we have the potential for this to be the rotating storm. That's where we have, this is going to be a drive where this is mainly a 2-lane highway up Manchester before you get to St. Albans Road right here. And yeah, thanks for putting that on the full screen for me because it's a little easier to see. Right when we get to St. Albans Road right here. So right at Highway T. So as I go from Wildwood all the way to Glencoe Road, and really most of this is going to be subdivisions or areas behind trees that you're not able to see where this tornado probably is at the moment. The wind's starting to pick up. And the other thing is, I know it's just from talking to a lot of people around here in West County, it's like, because of the bluffs, but how near it is to the river, they think it's not going to affect you. I really want you to pay attention because from 109, really from Wildwood Town Center all the way to the south here, as you get closer here, even as we look at maybe some anomalous data here to the north of Eureka, that's where we're probably going to see where I want you to take that shelter here. And you're going to be downstream here all the way anywhere in between some of these subdivisions that go up and down the bluffs here off of 109, you're not going to be able to see this. So this is north of the high school in Eureka. This is just south of Wildwood Town Center here and to really downtown Glencoe where the post office is specifically. But then behind it, you're looking at Ellisville. You're looking at areas further downstream. So as you look at this broad area of this tornado warning, we still continue to look at where that potential is moving downstream, and we may even have some other things to deal with.
Yeah, we have another tornado warning now for southern portions of Phelps County. This is down 44. So again, this whole line is producing severe thunderstorms across the area right now. Tornado warning for St. Louis County, northern portions of Jefferson County, and then in this area down to the southwest, this new tornado warning just popped in as this storm is rotating out here towards Spring Creek. That's going to head towards Highway 63, and that is going to take this over towards Edgar Springs. Definite circulation, another hook showing up here on this storm as it continues to track on to the east. So this is south of Rolla right now in the Edgar Springs area, and if you're in this area of Phelps County, you need to be in your safe place, inside, away from windows and doors, lowest level, maybe a bathroom, maybe a closet if you don't have a basement available. If you do have a basement available, then you should go there. Remember, we're wearing our shoes so that if we have damage, we're able to navigate that once we come back out. So again, now 2 tornado warnings in effect for the area. That includes that one for Phelps County, central portions of Phelps County. It does not include the immediate Rolla area, although Rolla is under a severe thunderstorm warning. We've also seen upwards of 2 inches of rain or more with these storms, and so we also have some flooding issues on the highways around the St. Louis area. Our tornado warned storm here in St. Louis, there it is. It's continuing to hook out here into West St. Louis County as it rolls pretty close to or just north of Highway 44. That circulation there will get in a little bit tighter here for you, and you can kind of see where we see that hook spinning here. This is just north and northwest of Eureka. We'll get in closer. We'll add the velocity in there, see what that's showing when we pop that on and where that circulation potentially is in here. Again, moving to the east-northeast. And so if you're anywhere out here along Highway 109, along 44, either side of 44, St. Louis County, into northern Jefferson County, you want to play this safe and you want to get into your safe spot. We also know that it's been pouring rain back here too, and we're also seeing some hail out of this storm. Not to discount the fact that as you go a little farther to the north here, the storm here in St. Louis is also producing hail up to the size of tennis balls, perhaps along 270. Certainly golf ball size hail along 270 right there. As you go through Dunn Road and all over towards Washington Elizabeth, this is a rough time to try to be on that road right now. And all through North County, that's going to cross into Madison County. So that is a severe thunderstorm, also capable of producing 60 to 70, maybe 75 mile per hour winds, in addition to the fact that we continue to track this potential tornado here. That rotation indicated here in the Wildwood area, in the Eureka area, and continuing to move on towards the east and northeast as this storm is tracking at about 40 miles per hour. And Gary, I'll let you talk for a few minutes and I'll get you a track on this.
Yeah, and I just want to talk about that storm specifically because I did queue up, that's unfortunately in an area where we have a lot of cameras along the interstate there on 44, but also it's an area that, is right next to Six Flags, and that's where the burst of wind, and I'm going to show you what that looks like here. What I do want to point out is as we have two separate tornado warnings right now, the one for specifically, you're starting to see kind of where that inflow, where that's perhaps where we're starting to see that rotation, and that's why I think that this, while it is a radar indicated tornado, I think there's pretty significant wind. We got some updates from people in St. Albans. Winds sound like a freight train and hailed awfully hard here for 3 minutes. You can see where that hail core is now south of Melrose here, and that's kind of the same area right south of St. Albans Road and T in that intersection between there and Manchester. And that's where maybe it's lagging just a little bit. So it's probably moving right over downtown Wildwood right now. But what I want to point out here is where you'll start to see these darker shades, or lighter shades that is, because it goes the opposite of what you would think. But the lighter shades here, that's where these wind bursts are occurring. And what I want to point out here as we get behind that on 109 here, and here's what I want to do. I want you to look. Now I can't even see Six Flags here. And Eric, if you could pull this on the full screen so we can see what's going on here. I want to be able to show what's going on here. This is the MoDOT cam at Six Flags. Minutes ago when I went over to the computer and queued this up, you can see some of the rides. You can't see them anymore. This changed in an awful hurry. So as we look at where this storm is, that's the one that's moving, the winds bursting right now, where you're looking at those 60+ mile-an-hour winds right now, moving here right past Pacific and between Pacific and Eureka. That's where Six Flags is, of course, and that's where you're starting to see that continuation of where this tornado warning is in place. And that's why we're with you here, because we're still seeing bursts of wind with that potential rotation. And this is still that area between 109, downtown Wildwood, and Eureka High School here. So I really think right now, as you look at the potential threats behind this, you're seeing more bursts of wind than anything as that hail core is, but perhaps the back edge of this, and you can see kind of where that polygon has been trimmed, Scott, but really right now it's, I would say 100 right past the post office here. That's where we're seeing that burst of wind here in Manchester. Like I mentioned, it's just south of Highway T there, right from Wildwood, and these are areas where there's a lot of trees. There's also probably just going to be some general mixing of the wind anyway, just because it has to go through all these trees, all these little bluff areas anyway. So there's going to be an awful lot of issues. And obviously, Scott, I just showed you that camera, some blinding rain here as we monitor the potential threat. And they're going to be more like this here, even as we look at the one in Phelps County and perhaps more here over the next several hours. Yeah, so as we track this storm here in St. Louis County, just to give you the timeline on it, we're coming up on 527 right now, so it'll be at Tyson 532. We're getting into Crestwood with this, even though you're not in the tornado warning. You would want to be ready to move if this circulation continues. But Crestwood on the timing of that is at 546. Kirkwood is at 545. So you're not in that warning yet as you get into Crestwood, as you get into Kirkwood, as you get into Brentwood and Maryland Heights. But this storm is tracking in your general direction. So that's what we want you to be prepared for at this point right now. We also have that other tornado warning that's in effect, and that includes, at this point, Phelps County, central portions of Phelps County, and that down to the southwest of St. Louis is going to continue to be a problem for us here over the next hour. That storm's now starting to cross in and across the county line here.
and coming in, it will track north of Edgar Springs. This is a pretty rural area here, down into portions of Phelps County. But if you're south of 44, it's really just this storm, and that's going to go towards the Phelps and Dent County line, but it will be crossing over Highway 63 and Highway 72 as it continues to track onto the east. Now, this is a very rural area, but you folks should be in your safe place as well, because it's actually this area farther south of St. Louis a little more conducive to seeing that rotation and to seeing these storms spin as they push on to the east. I think it's going to go just to the north of Edgar Spring, but that takes that potential tornado somewhere along and just north of State Route M here down in Phelps County. So, Gary, we continue to monitor these storms. They are severe thunderstorms. We've had hail reports up to 2.5 inches, so around tennis ball size hail has been reported with some of these storms so far, and they continue to move off to the northeast. They are not losing any of their strength. Perhaps some 60 to 65, 70 mile per hour winds with some of these storms, in addition to the hail, plus some of the storms starting to rotate. As you know, we do have that tornado watch. It's in effect for the metro area and down to the south. While the potential for tornadoes certainly exists, the potential for those stronger tornadoes, ones that would last longer and do more damage, is higher as we head into southeastern portions of Missouri and farther southern sections of Illinois. So we have to be concerned for you folks right now that are down to the south, down here in Potosi, in Farmington. Even though there's nothing imminent for you right now, you need to be thinking about where your safe place is as you go to the south, because these storms are going to be moving into your area. The environment is conducive to creating storms that could produce tornadoes, or as we're starting to see here, where we're kind of bowing out potentially some widespread damaging winds. It is Memorial Day weekend. We have a lot of folks that are camping down at Merrimack State Park, maybe Onondaga Cave, maybe you're down at Washington State Park, Hahn State Park. If you have friends that you know are camping in those areas down to the south, text them and let them know that rough weather is coming, so that they can get prepared and be ready to seek shelter. The communication methods, obviously, at the campground, not always optimal. Text messages usually work even if you can't get them on the cell phone. We're still watching the circulation here, though, as it's rolling right along and through the Six Flags area. It's pretty close to Six Flags, or just east of Six Flags now, Gary, as it continues to slide on in.
Yeah, I did look at that camera. I looked at that different camera here on 44, and I'll pull that up in a second. You see the wind start to pick up. Many of their cameras show lowering clouds, so just looking out ahead of the storm system, you can really see where that potential is coming from. All the way from Rolla, and we have 2 separate tornado warnings. As a reminder, that's why we're cutting in, that's why we're here in the Indy 500, and these are not brief, weak tornadoes. These are going to be more significant wind threats of 70+ mile per hour and very large hail at the moment. As you can see, one of the warnings extended. And this is starting to look to me still, with the way the radar is, like it is actually starting to see that inflow, and that's where you'll see this from Eureka. And while I haven't been able to pick this up, and we have enough cameras down here, this is something that we watch out for specifically. This is why we have this tornado warning in place here, right along 44. So if you have anybody in Valley Park, Fenton, off of 141, even Crestwood, like Scott has been mentioning, that's an area that I'd like you to just go ahead and get inside here and get into the interior room, into the basement, because this is the area where I think we're probably seeing the most rotation right now at the moment. You can see that here from Eureka, and we're starting to see that wind move, and that's the toward, and then you have away, and that's where we're starting to see that rotation a little bit, and that tight gradient where the wind is really picking up here. And as I zoom in, you can see that's just crossed 100 right at that Eureka exit here, and that's where we're watching where is the wind picking up a little bit. The other thing is, we're even to the north, we're starting to see some of these weak areas of rotation, but I want to show you what this looks like here now on some of our MoDOT cameras. Every one that I pick out ahead, you can see the trees moving a lot more, but this is, I'm trying to pick out one that's each ahead, and we obviously have a lot of drivers, so there's a lot of eyeballs on this as it goes over some of those bluff areas. So this is going to be something that's very picturesque, you're able to see downstream, but from the sense of the wind, we already have multiple reports of trees down behind that. So as we still look at that 60 to 70+ mile an hour wind threat at the very least, and still, as we look at each radar picture, it still looks like you'll see that inlet here, and that's where you know, not only do you have the big hail on 100 between Wildwood and Eureka, just probably right about the high school here, and this is, keep in mind, a minute or two behind because of technology. It can only feed the data so quickly, but we're still looking ahead at some pretty significant hail, and the fact that just that S shape right here. You can see where we have that S shape. And just because of that, that's where the wind is coming in, the wind is going out. That's where that potential rotation is. And at the very least, I'd say it's upwards of 60 to 70 mile per hour wind right now. And that's some of the updates that we have here as we look. And, you know, I have to pull up a few things here to kind of get, you know, updates from what's going on. But in terms of, you know, the severe thunderstorm warnings that are in place, we break into that. We have 70 mile per hour wind, but also we still have this tornado warning that's in place. And that's what we're going to monitor here as we continue to look at this wide area of storms, Scott. We have 2 separate tornado warnings in our area. And right now, this is going to be something that it seems like we're continuing to monitor as this line moves into even more of a favorable environment.
Yeah, in fact, just heard from the emergency managers down in Iron County and Annapolis. And they were saying that they've opened up the community tornado shelters down there. So that area, of course, was hit a week and a half ago with strong to severe thunderstorms and caused some significant damage there. So what did you say?
It's just if we need to go to Mark at all, we can chat with Mark. He's got a couple of updates whenever we.
Okay. Well, that wasn't what I wanted to do. Let's clear that. So
we always want to talk to Mark, but you can,
We do have some updates.
Yeah.
As you might expect, the Cardinals game is on delay. There are people, the operations there across the flashing signals to Cardinals fans across the big board that they should seek immediate shelter in the concourse area, in the bathrooms if they can. There are multiple reports coming in from across the region of trees toppled and roads covered in water. In St. Peter's, we're also seeing similar signs near Villa Ridge and Pacific where trees have been toppled over. Emergency managers are also tracking some distressing reports that perhaps people are not listening to those flood warnings, so be careful if there are flood waters out there for sure. And that's some of the first signs of damage that we're seeing across the area.
Yeah, and that's, you know, one of the things we've had, in some cases, we've had more than 2 inches of rain out of this in an hour, hour and a half, and that's causing flooding. So that's another concern. And you don't want to drive through those flooded roads. Our first responders are already going to be stressed by these storms in the response where they have actual damage that they have to deal with. So let's play it safe and just stay inside and stay put until these pass through. So all along this line, we have strong to severe thunderstorms. We have our tornado warning here that is in southern portions of St. Louis County, far northern portions of Jefferson County. Our other tornado warning down into portions of Phelps County, but we cannot discount all of the entire line of storms. We still have severe thunderstorm warning up here, parts of Montgomery County, now for a good chunk of Madison County here in Illinois, as well as through the northern part of St. Louis City, although the worst of it for the city of St. Louis has gone by to the north. But Chain of Rocks Bridge heading over to 255, it is hail and wind and rain right now. And we've had all the reports of the wind back here associated perhaps with some circulation or just the downburst winds within this storm. These storms have a lot of wind. It looks like the hail core right now is in the vicinity of east of 109 and is approaching that area of Baldwin. This looks like that's Olive. And so, you know, you're coming in here on Manchester Road. As you get out here towards Clarkson and Olive, you're going to end up with some pretty large hail in that area, perhaps up to the size of tennis balls, or at least up to the size of golf balls. That's enough to do quite a bit of damage. And again, you're still seeing that bit of a hook here as we look to the south. We'll pop on here the velocity. I just want to show you strong winds showing up in here. Tremendous amount of winds, not necessarily with rotation. That may be down in this area here that's very close to, you know, the Jefferson County, St. Louis County line along the Merrimack River. But outside of that, strong winds. And the reports from many places have indicated that we've had that. And these winds have been causing us problems. Strong winds with the storms down around the Rolla area right now. And again, that tornado warning going north at this point, just north of Newburgh down there in Rolla and heading south of Rolla. So Gary, this whole line is a problem. This area down here, Iron County, Annapolis, they opened up the community storm shelters. They had the tornadoes earlier. This is an area here, southeast Missouri. You already see that was a confirmed tornado there. You have another one as you get down farther south, another tornado warning. This area down to the south, and that's going to include Steelville, that's going to include Potosi, all along Highway 8, probably into the Valley Mines area, and going south towards St. Genevieve, Perryville, down towards Ironton, down towards Bunker, Lesterville, Centerville. You folks have been hit hard the last couple of weeks with some of these storms, in the last month and a half, really. But this area is more favorable for the storms to be able to rotate in a more intense fashion than what we're seeing in St. Louis. And it's bad enough with what we're seeing in St. Louis right now with that tornado warning for South St. Louis County and northern portions of Jefferson County. Severe thunderstorm warnings elsewhere for us, Gary.
Yeah, and it looks like getting some reports here from this storm that's moving through West County and into Franklin County. A lot of, and you mentioned the possibility of baseball-sized hail still there, but it looks like at that point there's a lot of areas that people are sending me a ton of marble size, and we're talking coat the ground like snow type marble-sized hail. So there's a lot of reports of that right now in that area in Franklin County and into West St. Louis County. Still, this hook is probably our biggest story right now as we have this tornado warning in place. While we have not seen a confirmation of a tornado just yet, this seems to be the area that, as this has continued, it's not moving in a less than favorable environment. It's continuing to look like this. And so as it does, areas in Fenton that I want to keep you in your safe place here as we monitor this trend, because this is the main story for us here as we look this even into Melville and Lemay, and as we cross the river here. That's an area, and while you're still not involved in this, Arnold, I still want to look at this at 55 and 255, and that's where we're probably going to be able to see a better camera here in shortly. But you'll notice here we have this inflow where it's just like watching something go down the drain, right? That's where you're watching that start to come in, and if we get that tight enough rotation, it lowers. That's where a tornado is. That's why we have a tornado warning in place. At the very least, behind this, we have significant wind between 60 to 70 miles an hour that's caused a lot of damage here behind it, specifically in Pacific. And as like I mentioned, if you're in Fenton right now or you're in Sunset Hills, those are the areas that even downstream, if you're just barely inside the tornado warning, the siren's hearing off, your phone goes off, those are the areas that I'd like you to go inside the interior of your house right now or into a basement, because while we may not see a tornado at this point, this is a pretty classic signature. This is kind of a textbook type of signature as we look at that. The radar doesn't provide some big, hey, this is really, really red, this is really, really green right here. We have the really red, but we don't have quite the signature there. There's a lot going on in between that, but there is significant wind behind it. And as we see this, that's where there's a lot of damage. The wind is picking up. We have a lot of hail behind that as well. And that's where this has moved through 44 as we continue to monitor that wind. Is really right from you get past the quarry here off 44. Once again, those are bluffy areas where the wind is starting to pick up, even as we look at a couple of other minor areas of rotation. But that's to the north. That's where not necessarily where the most main storm system is, as we look at, once again, another radar image of about 1 to 2 minutes. And that's what we'll have to look at if they continue this. But Fenton is an area that I'd like for you to just go inside to your safe place here at this moment, because from a standpoint of areas that are impacted, while it's not, it doesn't have, the polygon hasn't been moved just yet, it's something that we're still going to have to watch this specifically, because we're going to have more eyes on it in the city, even driving. So as we look at what's going on, that's where we're going to see those updates here as we watch this continued tornado warning. And we still have the possibility for that 2.5-inch tennis ball, baseball size hail as we see some of these storms that grow, Scott. So it'll be interesting to see. I would be hard pressed to not see a tornado warning being continued despite us not having eyes on this thing, but just because of the way that all the ingredients are and the way this storm has showed the last 2 to 3 scans, it doesn't look like it's weakening. Looks like it's tightening up a little bit. And
that really large hail is approaching 141 right now in St. Louis County. And so we have a track just on the hail part of this storm that takes it through town and country, takes it through Key Summit. It's going to go right over 270, generally between Gravois and up to about Manchester. So guess what? That takes it into the Kirkwood area. It takes it into Crestwood, Rock Hill, Webster Groves, all along Manchester Road here, and eventually into Maplewood and Richmond Heights. So we're talking about hail perhaps up to the size of tennis balls and winds perhaps gusting 60 to 70 miles per hour. That tornado warning hasn't been expanded just yet, but we still have severe thunderstorms across the area, and these are producing large hail, damaging winds. We've seen that. We have our 2 tornado warnings, one here in St. Louis County, the other in central portions of Phelps County, and the storms are going to continue to grow as we head into this afternoon and as they move on to the southeast from here. So there's what the regional radar looks like right now. And again, it's all along this line. This area down here towards Sullivan at the moment looks like it's sub-severe winds, but those are still moving towards Merrimack State Park right now. There's your tornado warning here rolling right across Highway 63. And if we go in tight in that area and give you a look down there, because that circulation still looks rather impressive. Very rural area here as we go down north of Edgar Springs and rolling right along here across Highway 63 and then into southern portions of Phelps County. That's Highway 72 there. It went through Spring Creek. We don't have any damage reports out of that, but certainly the signature is indicative of a potential tornado along that line as it continues, in particular that storm, because it's by itself. And whenever you have storms that are out by themselves, you end up with problems. Here's some of that rainfall. I mean, we've been seeing dramatic amounts of rainfall. And here's our new tornado warning that's going to be including St. Louis.
6:30 now, and St.
6:30.
Clair, so they've continued that downstream.
So that's the new severe thunderstorm warning.
Tornado warning.
Sorry.
You're good.
And that does include, right here, really the southern half of St. Louis City, and then central portions of St. Louis County, down into southern portions of St. Louis County, and then across into northern portions of Monroe County and into St. Clair County. So this does include Cahokia Heights, it includes Washington Park, it includes East St. Louis, obviously it includes St.
Which one are you
Louis,
looking at?
Tower Grove. That circulation's still here somewhere in the vicinity of 141. Down by Fenton, perhaps, and trying to track off towards the east-northeast. So Crestwood, Kirkwood, Melville, you should be in your safe spot now, going to the lowest floor. A basement's best if you have it. If you don't have a basement, then your next option is on the lowest level of whatever building you're in, with as many walls between you and the outside as possible. And that means a bathroom, a closet. We want to stay away from windows and doors as the storm is coming through, in addition to that potential for a tornado, because we're seeing a bit of that rotation there and that signature. Look at the hail around Valley Park up towards Manchester and Baldwin. That is very large hail, perhaps to the size of tennis balls. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit larger. That too is tracking off to the east. And then we'll add in the winds that are with this just behind the circulation. There's a tremendous amount of wind with this storm, so we can expect some tree branches to come down, if not trees altogether. This also is likely going to result in some power outages as well. The circulation, again, in this area here, pretty close to Highway 141 in that Fenton area, sliding off towards the east and to the northeast. It does impact the southern portions of the city of St. Louis. So now they're telling everyone, I'm sure, at Busch Stadium to get to their safe spot. And Busch Stadium was, I think, the first athletic facility or the first stadium in the country to become a storm-ready baseball park. So they have everything marked as to where to go. Down here towards Columbia, Illinois, Dupont, Sauget, Carondelet, you need to be in your safe place now. That includes Lemay, that includes Crestwood, that includes Afton. As this storm and this potential tornado indicated by radar with that circulation, in addition to the large hail, in addition to the tremendous amount of wind that comes along with it, this is all sliding off towards the east and to the northeast right now, and will impact much of the metro area. So this is a tornado warning, a radar indicated tornado, Gary, and this storm is packing quite the punch as it's rolling in. Just in the last hour, or last 30 minutes to an hour, we can see how this storm has been moving in and see how that circulation has been evolving and changing and still holding together. And that's one of the reasons why this tornado warning has been extended farther to the east to include the city of St. Louis, western portions of St. Clair County, southeastern portions of St. Louis County, and northern portions of Monroe County.
Yeah, and once again, this is this is the potential to be. We have some significant damage already. This is the potential to be something that we talk about for the next 2 to 3 hours, as there are still more areas that are impacted. And even though we don't have our eyes on this tornado, that tornado warning, this signature is, you can obviously see some of the arch that it's very ominous looking on that side of the horizon. But we have this wide area where we're looking at this specific inlet near Fenton. Like I mentioned, that's the area where I told you Fenton 15 minutes ago. Get inside of the interior of your house, the basement if you have it here, because it's that inflow here where we have just like if you were to watch something rotate down the drain, that's the same type of concept that we have here. You have here this inflow here, you have this outflow, and that's where that rotation, and this is a textbook type of thing, even though we don't have our eyes on it. We're starting to see some of those clouds lower in general, so there's a lot of also wind damage behind that. But like Scott has mentioned, as we've continued, the National Weather Service has continued this warning downstream. We're going to stay with you through at least 6:30 here as this works its way across the river here. So as we look into St. Clair County, St. Louis City, these are areas that we're still watching right now. And what I was doing over there was trying to get some of these cameras up so we could see not only the arch, but I flipped some of the cameras around on the other side of the Metro East to see if we could see anything here. But right now, the northern edge of that here in Afton is wrapped in rain, where we have significant hail potentially on the way. But it's right here, and it doesn't look like much right now, but I put this into motion here, and you can see it maybe tightening up a little bit in the last frame or two here. Right now, north of Arnold, you can really see where maybe it's starting to become more of that L shape here where it slows down, and I want to point that out here right now is, you could start to see that the burst of wind here behind in Fenton, you're already seeing that pick up here right at 141, right past High Ridge. But this little burst of wind right here, that's probably my area of concern north of Arnold. And of course, we'll pull our camera up here shortly. I looked at it a minute ago. It didn't show anything yet, but I'm thinking that it may be a little more significant now, just because north of Arnold there, that's where that little signature over the last radar scan is the brightest. And you can see that that rain is really starting to pick up, but that's where we may be starting to see where, if we're going to find where this tornado was, even on the radar, that's where I think that would be right now. So that's just south of Butler Hill Road here, right south of 270 and 55. That's where we're going to watch this tornado continue to work its way across the river to Columbia, to Sugarloaf, to East Carondelet, to Cahokia. Those are the areas that are involved in that tornado warning right now. And a lot of times we get, Scott, is we look at some of these tornadoes and they weaken, or the last few events that we've had are these brief spin-up tornadoes. And yes, we come in and we talk to them about you, but we don't go, okay, well, it's a brief tornado, maybe going away. There's a lot of signs that we may see storms like this even further south, but this one has not weakened at all, and it's something that we got to take pretty seriously here, I think, this evening.
And the hail on this is huge, too. It looks like it's a good, 2.5-inch hail, maybe up to the size of a baseball with that. And that right now is running just north of 44 as it comes into the Shrewsbury area. I've got a track on that circulation, kind of the path and timing of it. You don't have a lot of time here in Afton. It's on your doorstep right now. Lemay, 5:57 at Carondelet, Tillman at 6:02, Millstadt, Illinois at 6:05, and then over at Royal Heights at 6:10. Again, that's taking it, really confining it to just keeping it in that path. Now, if that deviates a little bit and were to go a little farther to the north or a little farther to the south, we'd have to add some more spots into that. But that's where it looks like the storm itself is tracking right now as it continues to move on to the east. And as Gary said, this is not really let up in intensity. In fact, that hail core, if anything, has become more intense over the course of the last 45 minutes or so, and it's still ingesting the air here, pulling in air that's conducive to making the system spin and creating that dangerous twisting of the wind. And that's why we want you to get to your safe place right now if you're impacted by this tornado. 255 and 55, 270 and 55 in that area is where the circulation is now, just north of Arnold. It is pretty close to the athletic fields here as you go just south of 255 before you get to the Merrimack River, moving on towards the east. So you folks on the Illinois side here, especially in northern portions from Columbia, northern portions of St. Clair, northern portions of Montgomery County, western St. Clair County. You need to be in that spot that you feel safe in. Wearing your shoes, taking something to protect your head in case there is a direct hit. Now, we don't have a confirmed tornado on this. We've got a lot of scary looking clouds that we've seen out of this particular scenario here that over the course of the last couple of hours, that's been what we've been looking at. But we've also had large numbers of hail with this and reports of wind. Tree branches down out in St. Peters and Cottleville, and a fair number of power outages reported there. Right here in central portions of Phelps County, we still have our tornado warning there for that storm. This is a new severe thunderstorm warning here. Northern portions of Washington County, southwestern Jefferson County, southern portions of St. Clair County. That's north of Potosi, but it does include the Richwoods area, and it includes the area just east and southeast of Bourbon. So this is along Highway 185, but it's north of Highway 8 here. Very rural areas. You can expect strong winds as well as the hail there. We'll go back down into this storm that's in Phelps County just to give you a little closer view of that. That is pushing towards southern portions of Crawford County. It may have lost a little bit of its structure there, but it still is an impressive storm, still causing problems here as it's crossing Highway 72. It's headed towards Winkler and Seaton at this point. Again, very rural areas of Phelps County, but also headed towards a rural area of Crawford County. And while we're down this way, notice we have the tornado warnings butting up against Reynolds County. You folks in Reynolds County?
Confirmed tornado now.
Yeah, down
Further
there.
to the north. No, ours.
Oh, ours
Yep.
is confirmed. Okay.
Scooch on back now.
There we go. Okay, who confirmed it?
I don't have that information yet. It didn't pop up, but
Okay.
it just switched here.
So now it's a
So
confirmed
my guess
tornado.
would be radar confirmation here
Well,
as we
you can
look at
see
debris.
you can see just in that
Yeah.
last frame. Look at the hook
Yeah.
curling up in there as it's crossing right over Highway 61, crossing right over Lindbergh. You know, this is in that area around Tesson Ferry. It is moving to the east. Folks, you need to be in your safe spot now, lowest level.
Yeah.
We'll stop this motion here, bring it up to the current level, and then put a quick track on that as to where we think that is. First, we'll look at the velocity to see what that's showing, see if it gives us
Yeah,
any
they've
idea.
called it. It's a radar confirmed tornado now.
Yeah, okay,
Yep.
so we can see that,
Yep.
yeah, and we can see that there's your surge right here in that Melville area, north of Arnold, south of Melville. That's taking it right over towards Tesson Ferry, Lee May Ferry. You know, this right down there towards the drivers. Many of you may have been down towards that driver's test area. That's where this is. That's moving right towards and very close to the JB Bridge, that circulation in this area. So there's Yeager Road. Again, you're going to want to be in your safe place here as this storm is moving into northern portions of Monroe County in just the next few minutes. That area of Monroe County would include Columbia, Illinois. You need to be in your safe spot as this storm rolls through. A confirmed tornado on the radar. Let's see if we're seeing that here. And there's how we're confirming it. We see this is debris being lofted up inside the storm, and it's co-located near where that circulation is. So when we have a dropout like that, it's an indication that there are things other than raindrops or hailstones in that storm. So this is a radar confirmed tornado now. You need to be in your safe spot, moving just south or right along 255 here in South St. Louis County, crossing the JB Bridge and headed towards Columbia, Illinois.
Yeah, and as we look at, I pulled up one of our cameras here in Arnold. I tried to maneuver it, but the issue right now, and this is what I want to point out here ahead of things, is you may not be able to see this because the radar, we see it on the radar right now, but look how this is rain wrapped. So I don't want you to go outside and look for this as we have that confirmed tornado here from the radar, from the tornadic debris signature. And I want to point this out here. So now as I show you where this is, I looped this over the last few minutes so you could really see how just as we were talking about, this system has continued to evolve, and you can see kind of that thumb, and I'll zoom in just a little bit. But watch how this has really continued to settle in. This is just south of Melville. If you're in Columbia, this is another thing. If you're in Millstadt, that's where I'd really like you to be inside your interior area of a basement or, inside a bathroom here, because this is where the tornado is right now. It's south of Melville here as we zoom in specifically. So it's right across 255. As we look, it's right about to cross the river here into Bixby, right into Bluffside. Those are the areas, Millstadt, those are the areas that are involved in this specifically right here. This is where that tornado is occurring right now, where the winds are in excess of perhaps 70 or 80 miles an hour south of 55 and 255. And as Scott has mentioned, what has confirmed it is we have this debris detector. It's a different portion of the radar. It allows us to see debris being lofted up. They can tell what is debris and what isn't, just because of the way the technology is. And you can really see that here behind, just north of Yeager Road here, right south of Melville. So that's where that thumb that kind of sits there is. That's the rotation, and we're starting to see that where those little bits of yellow here right on Yeager Road. That's where that debris is being lofted up as this continues to work its way right across the river, right at 255. So we're going to try to keep getting eyes on it, but that's part of the storm that has us going inside our safe spot, Scott, because you know, this is not weakened, as we had mentioned just 15 minutes ago, and here we are. Now we have a radar confirmed tornado that we really need to take seriously.
Yeah, we certainly do. We need to be in our safe place right now. This signature here continues to indicate the rotation. And the other thing too with this is it's just gone through Kirkwood with the hail, and that's now pushing into the Shrewsbury area, about ready to push into most of the city of St. Louis. You're going to get large hail, at least to the size of quarters. There'll be some probably golf ball size or maybe tennis ball size hail in a good chunk of South St. Louis City here, south of Highway 44, maybe even approaching Busch Stadium. So right now, sliding through the Oakville and Melville areas and out of St. Louis County, across the river into portions of Monroe County, northern Monroe County, and western portions of St. Clair County. This storm continues to produce what we believe to be a tornado as it's headed towards that Bixby area, that Sugarloaf area. This is Bluffside, and then you go a little farther up and you're into East Carondelet. So you folks here, if you don't have a basement, and we know this area is prone to flooding in many cases as well. You're going to get some heavy rain, but if you don't have a basement, your safest place is in a closet or in a bathroom with as many walls between you and the outside as possible. We're wearing our shoes. We're going to take something to protect our heads as we track this storm off to the east. IMS is here. This is Illinois Route 163 from Millstadt, and that's 158 going out of Columbia. I think the worst of this is maybe if you're in Columbia, south of Columbia, let's say, is probably not where the tornado is going. But from Columbia north, that potential certainly exists here. That does include 255, and of course, on 157, Our Lady of the Snows in here too. So we need you in your safe place. That includes Cahokia Heights, over to Signal Hill, over to Stookie. Eventually, if this storm continues to hold together, you folks over here in Belleville and over into Shiloh, Illinois, you'll be involved in this tornado warning too. So now is the time over towards Mascoutah, Scott Air Force Base. Be preparing. Where is your safe place? Where are you going to go? And be prepared for this storm. Again, your hail right now really picking up on Manchester Road there as you go out towards Maplewood, coming into the city of St. Louis. Melville, you're seeing that circulation and the gusty winds behind the storm, behind the main area of rotation, which is tending to cross or very close to crossing the river now. You have a lot of strong winds here out Watson Road, down Highway 55, that are a part of the storm, but not necessarily part of the circulation and that tornado as it continues to move on to the east. Radar confirmed tornado because lofting debris into the air. Obviously, it's a circulation that we've been tracking. Showed up very well for us on the radar. Still is. Still hasn't lost its punch as it continues to move to the east. Now crossing over into Monroe County, the far northern portions of Monroe County, and into St. Clair County in Illinois. If this circulation continues to maintain its strength, it does appear that it's going into an environment that is conducive for a continuation of that potential of producing a tornado. So that means Smithton, Belleville, Mascoutah, O'Fallon, Shiloh. You could be in the path of a tornado here if it holds together. So be making your preps now off to the east. Back to the west, we've had reports of damage with some branches down. We have power outages in St. Charles. There's still rain there, but it's letting up some in intensity. Madison County here over towards Troy and Highland, we still have the severe thunderstorm warning there. Another severe thunderstorm warning down here, southeastern portions of Franklin County, northern Crawford County, southwestern Jefferson County. That's in that Richwoods area. And then we have our tornado warned storm down towards Rolla, which seems to has lost its circulation to some degree, so no longer a tornado warning on that, but the storm coming into Bunker has a tornado warning. In fact, these three storms down here that will be impacting areas of Reynolds and Iron counties shortly, they all have tornado warnings on them now ahead of arriving in Reynolds and Iron County. Our confirmed tornado here moving very close to the Mississippi River and the JB Bridge, heading over into St. Clair and Monroe County, northern portions of Monroe County. You need to be in your safe spot in those areas right now.
Yeah, and what we're looking at right now, too, with that is what we've noticed that, I've got this camera in Arnold, and I showed you this one here before, but what we're noticing now is, even as we have this radar-confirmed tornado, it is not as apparent. You'll look at this latest scan of the radar, you don't see that thumb anymore, that inflow, where that tornadic debris signature is occurring. That was for the reason for this tornado warning that with a confirmed tornado, but I still want to zoom in just a little bit. It's not as apparent, but it still exists here in Bixby, and you can see that here as it works its way across 255. That's the area that we're looking at for the potential for this tornado here, as we had, once again, debris was lofted up into the radar was able to see that. But what we're going to look at here specifically is the core of this wind here, because it's also pretty significant as well. In fact, you can see the core of this wind right now is pretty significant here, where you're looking at somewhat between 80 plus mile an hour wind here behind this. And this is just south of 255 here, as we kind of look at some of this here. Not as apparent here as I kind of loop this, and watch how you've seen this hook that follows just south of Fenton, and that's the one we were tracking here behind that. Watch how it's flattened out a little bit. As I zoom back in, you can see just a little bit. It is kind of flattened out a little bit. It's not as textbook. You don't see that kind of inflow where you see that in Bixby. It was more of an S before, and then it kind of was a little bit more, you could see the edge of it. And watch this, I'll loop this again. You can see where we kind of have that thumb in there. You don't have that quite as much. It's still there, so it's still an area that we're monitoring for the potential for that, but at the very least, significant wind is behind that as well. So even if you're in Belleville, Freeburg, even Mascoutah, those are areas that you need to take this seriously, because while that portion of it maybe has gone away, that doesn't mean the storm has weakened. It just means that tornadic debris signature or that hook that is not as apparent. So that's something that we're going to watch out for here as we monitor the fact that this area is still evolving as it moves south, and there are more areas to come, Scott, here over the next couple of hours.
Yeah, and they just took the radar confirmed off of the tornado warning now, because it looks like that debris signature has dissipated. So now they're still watching. It's still favorable for ingesting that rotation. Anytime you have the winds the way the winds are today, and you can create that twist near the surface, and then you suck it up into that cloud, and that's essentially what's happening here. You can get that dangerous twisting of wind. So the tornado warning continues here for far northern portions of Monroe County. Looks like that circulation would be in this area right where Highway 3 comes into 255, just north of downtown Columbia, and that's sliding off to the east. So this is still a tornado warned storm. We still have the heavy hail here moving in through Forest Park right now, moving into the central west end. Down here as you go out Highway 30, Gravois going southwest. You're looking at that out Watson Road. You know, we've had reports of large hail with this. We've had reports of tree branches down. Power outages are growing in St. Louis County because of this storm. We've also had power outages out in St. Charles County. I want to just kind of give you an advantage or another viewpoint here with all of the lightning with the storm. Around St. Louis, the storm that's down in Franklin County along the Washington County line that's trying to push towards Richwoods, and this storm that's back out here over towards St. Jacob and Troy and Highland, Illinois. Both of those, or all three of those, are producing a tremendous amount of cloud-to-ground lightning, which is very indicative of large hail, and that's what we've seen out of a lot of these storms as well, in addition to the dangerous winds. And it's not just the twisting winds that have been dangerous. Some of these winds where you may not have a circulation, 60 to 70 miles per hour, that's still enough to break the tree branches, to drive debris, and if it's hailing in the same spot where you're getting that, then you're taking those hailstones and they're being chucked around at a high rate of speed, and that damages your siding, it can break your windows. So again, that's why we're saying stay inside, away from windows and doors. Obviously, with the potential of a tornado here somewhere north of Columbia, perhaps heading towards the Millstadt area, you would want to be in your safe place, and that includes the area south of Centerville. Could shortly include the area over towards Belleville and Fairview Heights, out farther east and over towards Shiloh Valley and O'Fallon. So these storms are maintaining their strength. They're not losing any of their strength at this point, and they're continuing to show us the problems that they are producing as we continue to track them along. We'll watch this storm down in Reynolds County, northern Reynolds County, and into Iron County. We do have a severe thunderstorm warning on that cell there that's pushing into southern portions of Crawford County. Again, these are areas where you have campgrounds and you have a lot of people, especially on a Memorial Day weekend, who would be out and about. They do have ways to notify people at the campground for sure, and we suspect some of you are probably streaming us in those areas right now. But for Iron County, especially down in Annapolis, they said they were going to open the community shelters down in Annapolis for the tornado shelters if anybody needs shelter down there, if you don't have adequate shelter around St. Louis. The tornado warning, though, right now the only one we have is right here in the metro area, still includes the city of St. Louis, although one would think, Gary, that the better threat for seeing a tornado now is pretty much over here into St. Clair County based on the radar presentation that we're seeing now, and knowing that this radar is a couple of minutes behind the actual reality. The storm is moving along faster than we can get the radar information processed and then sent through the satellite and all the channels and then get it to you on TV. But again, you need to be in your safe place here over in St. Clair County, and
there's the new
tornado warning, which basically is an extension of the one that was already there. And yes, it's going to take it right into the places we were just talking about here, into Belleville, into include O'Fallon. So this includes all along Interstate 64. Freeburg, you're in the path of this. Mascoutah, Lebanon, Shiloh, Scott Air Force Base also in the path of this. So that also includes Illinois Route 4, Illinois Route 13, 159 here, plus all of your smaller roads in and around the Belleville area. So if you're in Belleville, this storm is going to be awfully close to you. Really, it looks like that circulation's in this vicinity just west of Millstadt and headed towards the Belleville area right now in particular, especially the south side of Belleville. That would be our area of greatest concern. So get to your safe place inside, away from windows and doors. In addition to that rotation that we're seeing here and the potential that this is producing a tornado, we're also seeing winds of 60 to 70 miles per hour on a wider basis. And you can look back just to the west there, that very large hail that's now in the southern portions of the city of St. Louis, right down Broadway as you go almost down to the casino there. That's going to be pushing across the river towards East Carondelet. So Gary, we're tracking these storms.
Yeah, we also have a Reynolds County one now as well, which we'll get to here shortly.
All right.
But there are several that, as you pointed out. What I did want to look at right now is I found the only camera that doesn't look like it's absolutely being rained on. And what you're going to be able to notice is how the clouds are lowering. And that's what we see. When we see the clouds lower, we have that rotation, and it does produce a tornado. But you also kind of look at, the eerie green hint of the sky. And a lot of people, that's something that for many, many years we always look at. We have a lot of hail with this. There are going to be a lot of, clouds that are kind of funky and lowering. And we're going to watch some of this here. And that's, you get the right area of rotation, you can see just how fast this is moving. So as I talk about this tornado warning, that's where I showed you O'Fallon. We just mentioned minutes ago that we didn't have that tornadic debris signature. It kind of flattened out, but we want to make sure that you're still paying attention to this because there's no sign of it weakening. It just didn't have that same signature. And that is the case right now, because now we're starting to see that signature again here from Millstot. In fact, as we look at some of our emergency managers reporting, seeing some of that rotation. So you're seeing clouds like I just showed you in O'Fallon that are lowering, they're rotating. Maybe they don't have, that doesn't lower all the way to the ground, or the condensation that you're seeing doesn't have that rotation that reaches the surface. That's when the tornado occurs. You go from funnel cloud that's above the surface that may be rotating, or wall cloud, or then as it lowers, the wind reaches the surface, that's when a tornado is occurring. So as we look at that, that's possible here in Millstot, and that's where we have that rotation here. So as I mentioned what's going on, look at what's happening in terms of the amount of wind that's behind this. I mean, we have some pretty significant wind here, just queuing up some of these spots here behind this. The wind is here as that tornado warning still in place until 6. Watch how we have these two areas of wind from Millstot all the way up to the north here as well. And those are the areas that the wind is still pretty significant here right now at this hour here. So as we look at that potential tornado, you'll see that from Millstot. So it's south of Belleville here at this moment, but you heard the sirens go off. And I think with good reason, because it's not out of the question that we could see another area where, you know, we see that rotation. But right now, the one that's the most clear to me is the same one we've been watching here for the last hour and a half. And also, the race is in a rain delay, FYI. So if you're just kind of falling behind, you're not missing out on anything. But we want to keep you safe because we still have this tornado warning that's in place. At once radar confirmed, and still from Millstot, that's where, if you're not in your safe space right now, I'd like you to get in it, because even in Belleville into Freeburg, I think Freeburg and Smithton, this is an area along Douglas Road 159 that I think that this is probably tracking at a pretty significant pace here as we look at, and Scott's working on getting track on you on this specific system. But as we look at the areas from Mascoutah, that's probably the where we watch this storm, and you'll see how it kind of flattened out for a brief moment, and then it's back to being where we see that rotation that's probably a little bit more indicative. Once again, it's just like watching water drain, and you'll see that inflow here from Millstot, and then behind it, and that's where we have those ominous looking clouds where it, you know, look like this, where one of them lowers and we get that right formation. That's where we see that tornado, Scott. So this is in O'Fallon right now, and you're going to see a lot of stuff looking like this, but that tornado itself may be really hard to see with the amount of rain that's falling.
Yeah, it looks like there is, you know, and hail too. I mean, we're talking a lot of hail with this thing too. Here it is coming into Millstot, okay? And the warning goes farther to the east now. So what we want to do is kind of put a track on it with the new warning that's out, our timing on this, as far as where that circulation is. And we've given it a broad base here so we could, you know, basically cover everybody that might be in the path of this. But Belleville over to Smithton at 618. So, you know, it won't be long before what's rotating, or at least something that resembles rotation, is in Belleville. So you should be in your safe spot right now. Again, that's the basement if you have a basement. Not everybody has a basement. If you have an apartment, maybe you live on the second or third floor of an apartment, you know, maybe there's a storage area that's down in the basement that you could get to, or a laundry room. Or maybe you can go down to your friend's apartment on the lowest level. But you want to get as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Bathroom, closet. You want to be somewhere where you're away from windows and doors. Remember, we're wearing our shoes. All right, I think we've been through that a few times this year. Roachtown, Mascoutah in the path of this, eventually Wurtemberg and over to Damiansville if it gets that far over there and holds on to this circulation. Outside of that, you're still getting torrential rain and hail even into downtown St. Louis now. Gary mentioned it. We look at the lightning here and how extensive that lightning is, and it's just incredible all the way down 44. And now we have our new the next tornado warning for one of our counties is Reynolds County. Now, this is a very rural area, but this tornado warning is basically along Highway 72. It does include Centerville, Missouri, south along Highway 21, all the way down to Ellington. This is the storm right here. Very rural area here of Reynolds County. Mountainous terrain, lots of trees. There's not a lot of towns in these areas down here. There's Corydon. But I mean, you're talking county roads, and you're out in you know, the beautiful countryside of Missouri, down in Reynolds County. This is where we have our St. Francis Mountains. That does not include Johnson Shut-ins is up here. So the tornado warning does not include Johnson Shut-ins State Park. So again, tremendous amount of lightning. We've had the winds 60 to 70 miles per hour, perhaps higher than that. And now our tornado tracking here into potential tornado into the Belleville area, the Roachtown area. Our Lady of the Snows, it's about there now, and it continues to slide on in towards the east. We get in a little bit closer so you can see some of those roads that are in there. Again, 159 going in and out of Belleville, Highway 13 going in and out of Belleville. 15's in here too, so is Illinois 4 eventually, that's over here. But you need to be in your safe place, especially if you're just east of Millstadt and over into the Freeburg area right now. And this area here, there's Greenmount Road. That's an area you want to be concerned about. There's Highway 13, there's Douglas Road. So it's kind of in this, the circulation is somewhere in here, the rotation within this storm, and that's the potential that at any moment, because of the air it is ingesting into this storm, at any moment it's capable of creating that dangerous twisting wind. Now if we put on the velocity here, which is the wind, show you the winds associated with this storm. Outside of any potential circulation, those are winds showing up here in Cahokia Heights, east of Columbia. Those are gusty winds of 60 to 70, maybe 75 miles per hour right now. There's been a lot of that, and as a result, we've had scattered power outages across the region. That's another effect of these storms rolling through. And so that's going to continue as long as these storms continue to race off towards the east. New severe thunderstorm warning here for Bond County in Illinois, western Fayette County, northern Carlisle, or northern Clinton County to include Carlisle Lake. So if you have anybody you know over at Carlisle Lake, maybe they've been out on the water, surely they see the very dark sky and know that something's coming. We have a severe thunderstorm warning now south portions of Jefferson County. That's from about Peevely to Festus, and then that goes down just to about St. Genevieve and then over just north of Park Hills. Still have the severe thunderstorm warning here for portions of Washington County for 2 separate storms. Multiple storms along this line are severe. And then our other tornado warning is a little farther down to the south here, again, between Lesterville and Centerville and Ellington here, right down into portions of Reynolds County along Highway 72 and along Highway 21. So you folks, anywhere there's a tornado warning right now, you should be in your secure place where you are protected from the outside. As many walls between you as possible. No windows, no doors close by. You're protecting your head. You're wearing your shoes. That's in our tornado warnings. In the severe thunderstorm warnings, we may have large hail, golf balls to maybe as large as tennis balls in a few cases. And so in those areas, you would want to certainly be inside away from windows and doors. So Gary, very active scenario. Tornado warning continuing here for St. Clair County and for Reynolds County right now. Those are our 2 tornado warnings, but all of these storms are severe.
Yeah, and that's the main thing, that we still have the potential here, even if one of the tornado warnings, and the tornado threat went away, we'd go right back to the race. But that's not the case, and if we still monitor this tornado warning, we're going to be on with you until 7 o'clock at the very least, and I think a little bit longer here as you still see that that hail core that's south of Centerville and north of Belleville, and this is going to say south of 64 here at the moment. But what you'll notice here is I slowed this down. Watch how that rotation, that was a pretty clear and textbook tornado that was rotating, and we had radar confirmed tornado there, and then now it's kind of flattened out. That doesn't mean that this has gone away by any means, but it's just at least something, as these storms often do, they cycle and they go through one cycle, they flatten out, and then perhaps rotate yet again. And so that's what we're going to watch out for. This is probably what you would expect to look like with a tornado here on the end here with the rotation, and then the storm that develops on the other side of it with some large hail. Now the other thing about this is where this area closer to Iron County and Reynolds County that the tornado warning is in place until 7 o'clock for, is that, like Scott has mentioned, this is a very rural area as well, but it's a holiday for a lot of people. So if you're streaming things, these are the type of storms that I would expect are going to develop to the south, where we haven't seen any of these storms just yet, as they're in more of a favorable environment. We'll see how some of these other storms start to impact them as they slowly work their way off at about 40 miles an hour off to the east here. So from Farmington, Perryville, St. John, I mean, these are areas that I want to see how these storms are going to impact as maybe those storms are moving a little north. Is that going to slow things down, or is that going to continue to add maybe an extra piece of kindle to some of the ingredients that are already involved in? But because of where this is in between the Springfield radar and the St. Louis radar, you're not going to see the well-defined, but this is probably that little area that is, you know, the most impactful here at the moment. That's south of Lesterville, and that's the reason for the tornado warning here right now in Reynolds County. But the storms that are clearly rotating on radar, we can see kind of that little notch on the backside, right? That little finger here, and I can kind of show you that. That's that bottom little finger. That's the area that perhaps it is rotating, but perhaps is causing a tornado. And you see to the south, out of our area, there are two confirmed tornadoes. So we've already seen one of those so far in our area, but when it comes to maybe finding another couple of spots here locally that are starting to see maybe a burst of wind, and we're starting to see maybe a couple of areas of minor rotation. But as we've kind of mentioned, these areas to the south have more favorable spin. And so will be interesting to see how these little minor storms, these supercell storms that are developing themselves, Scott, are going to interact with those other storms, that line of storms to the north. Is it going to end the tornado threat, or is it going to turn it into more that linear, everybody gets 70+ mile per hour wind threat at some point? And I think that's maybe what's going to happen here over the next hour and a half.
And either way, it's going to cause problems and cause additional power outages. We're upwards about 15,000 customers on the Missouri side without power right now. So that's, you know, and that gets updated and gets added. What we have just heard from emergency management as we track this potential circulation here, it's coming through and off to the east of Belleville, it looks like, if we had to place where we would say that. And let's just go to velocity before I finish that thought. Really strong winds here coming into Belleville. These are going to knock some tree branches down at the very least. We did get a report, at least one, in Oakville of a tree on a house. Preliminary reports. DuPont, Illinois, right in here, also has 2 trees down on houses in that area. Keep in mind, the ground is also wet. And when you have a wet ground, your tree roots don't tend to hold as well either. So what normally an 80 or 90 mile an hour wind would take to blow over a tree, maybe a 60 or 70 mile per hour wind does that. But there's your hail and wind combination coming into the Belleville area right now. It's hard to really pick out in here where you have any definitive rotation, but obviously we still have kinks in the line, so we know we have rotation in here embedded, and it's not out of the question given the environment that exists here, the way the winds are in the upper levels of the atmosphere, not only close to the ground, where you can create additional spin and quickly spin something up. So the tornado warning continues here in St. Clair County. And if you're in Freeburg, if you're over to Shiloh, to Mascoutah, approaching Highway 4 here and over towards New Baden, you need to be making your preps now to get to your safe place. Turn the TV up. Keep us on. We'll keep you updated here. This is kind of the broader perspective of what's going on. Still looking at hail out here along 70 as you work your way east through portions of Madison County. It's starting to let up for St. Louis back to the west. We know we have tree branches down in St. Peters and the Cottleville area as well. Suspect we have more reports that'll come in from St. Louis County as we go along, but Oakville had a report of a tree down on a house there. Now we have severe thunderstorm warning down in Jefferson County, down into Washington County. These storms here, gusty winds, that storm west of Belgrade there, and the southern portions here of Washington County. Very rural area, but this is, you know, kind of near the Huza, and that's where a lot of, you know, floaters are sometimes. Hopefully they're not out there right now. And then we go a little farther south. Here's our tornado warning down into Reynolds County right now. Again, you're seeing that classic signature with a hook. And the problem with the areas here of southeast Missouri, especially this area of Reynolds County and Iron County into Madison, St. Francis, St. Genevieve County, over towards Perry County, Randolph County, this area is more primed for the potential of those stronger, longer lasting tornadoes to develop. just because of the way the atmosphere is. And so that wind is much more capable of creating those storms that can effectively spin and rotate and drop tornadoes at any time in very quick fashion. You're seeing right now some of that rain ponding out there at the moment. I-64.
55.
55, yeah. So, you know, we've got a lot of water that's come down very quickly out of these. And so flooding is another concern, especially in the urban areas right now. But that's not a life-threatening concern. This could be. If we spin up a tornado here, right now Belleville's getting the heavier hail and the torrential rain, and we're continuing to track the potential of a circulation and a possible tornado here off to the east. Looks like we got a new severe thunderstorm warning that's going to encompass the area south of that tornado warning for much of the rest of Monroe County and down into Randolph County as well, Gary. So this whole line producing strong winds, torrential rain. At times we've had hail, golf balls up to maybe tennis balls or larger. You see the storm trackers out cruising around right now in these rain-soaked roads. And again, a lot of problems here with standing water and poor drainage areas. And don't drive through the flooded roads. I know this dude's in a truck and he's up high, but you don't know in some cases if that water's flowing across the road, if it's washed the pavement out. And if it's flowing and moving, it doesn't take much to move you off the road, and then it becomes a big problem. Gary?
Yeah, and as we look at the transition of how this line is, and just kind of chatting with some of the National Weather Service folks, and they're kind of echoing just what I mentioned just a few minutes ago, is how does this storm system evolve over the next hour from either a line of storms, or are we going to start to see maybe some changes to things where we had those storms that were by themselves and they had that one storm that was creating that still that's involved in this tornado warning right now. Where you don't see that hook anymore quite as prominently. And I think what we're going to start to notice is we're going to watch the storm like this that goes from Highland to O'Fallon. Watch how this is all in a line. Fine, that's where the wind threat is, right? And I still think that there's going to be the potential for a tornado here right now, especially near Freeburg, and I'll throw the velocity up right now. But I want to point out the transition, how we go from a wind threat here to maybe, we go from the tornado threat to perhaps maybe just a pure wind threat with some of these little small spin-up tornadoes on the leading edge of that. And those are the types of tornadoes that we said that, earlier, we have the potential for stronger tornadoes, and I still think that we see that to the south here at this moment. But for this particular area, that's what this may be transitioning to, is we have this wide area of a line. And you'll see these two types of storms where they rotate and they're on their own. Those are the types of storms that have the potential in this area to the south, where we have the potential for more of a rotating storm as it creates on its own. But it's also going to be interacting with this line of storms, where we start to see maybe the leading edge rotate. Some of these may rotate, and I still think we're far from done here, as we have a half an hour to go on that specific tornado warning, and also the one in Reynolds County. But what we're going to watch are these areas where the wind has significantly picked up. And you'll notice where we have some reds and greens, and maybe not anything too significant, but I think that's what we're going to see. You'll watch the wind come out from one of those storms. It's going to meet this area, and that's where we may start to see some rotation on the leading edge of things as those storms are developing. So that's an area I want to watch out for specifically. And you also look from Belleville here north of Freeburg, south of 64. That's where the burst of 65 to 70 mile an hour wind when it comes to the radar is indicating. So that's where you're going to see damage at the very least, but it's also where we've been watching for that tornado warning that's still in place here at this moment. And that's north of Freeburg here, but that's the area that I think that if there is some sort of tornado that is, maybe indicated by the radar, that's where I think we're seeing it. And you'll notice how we shift from those small little storms to this one big line where there may be some rotating areas in the middle of things, and they're not moving very quickly, only at 45 miles an hour. That's where you're starting to see that. You also notice that notice this little area in between here from New Athens to Redbud, and how there's kind of these little, just these little U's here. That's where I think we're starting to see maybe if you get the right wind in between that, that's where we may see these little smaller tornadoes here at this point sometime throughout the night, Scott. So even though there are only 2 tornado warnings and it doesn't look as impressive from a standpoint of textbook radar confirmed tornado, I think we maybe transition to a new part of the storm, which is just as significant, really, but it just maybe causes more issues throughout.
Yeah, and we're getting reports now in Belleville of golf ball size hail. We've had reports up around Litchfield of nearly tennis ball size hail, it looks like. Pretty much the size of the top of a Coke can. We still have our tornado warning down here in Reynolds County. That storm not quite showing as much presentation as it was of the typical hook, but just south of there, another tornado warned storm. And again, this area of southeast Missouri, we really have to watch this because the conditions here are favorable for these storms to twist and rotate, and that's the potential here, especially as we head down towards Cape Girardeau and Carbondale, where we may see some longer track tornadoes and more intense tornadoes versus these small, quick hitting ones like what we think we've seen so far today. But you can tell this whole line is not losing any of its strength at all. So we still have intense winds. We have large hail. Probably the largest hail is happening around the Belleville area right now. And as we go over into Belleville, you can see it just east of town. That's where we're looking at some of this larger hail heading over towards Shiloh right now. So that's going to be pushing over here towards Greenmount Road. Probably already is in that area right now. Of course, that's pretty close to where our camera is in that area along 64. But that's going to head over towards Mascoutah as well, right along following Highway 158 and Highway 161. So these are the areas where we're going to be dealing with that very large hail, torrential rain. We're also looking at some pretty intense winds with this, 60 to 70 mile per hour winds. Now, we haven't had the update from St. Clair County and Madison or Monroe County really on power outages just yet. They tend to lag a little bit behind the damage, so it takes a little bit to get to that point. But one would think that you'll be like what we've seen in St. Louis County, city of St. Louis, back into Franklin and Jefferson County, where those numbers have increased some as these storms have whipped through the area with not only the hail, but the wind. And we've had reports of trees down on homes in Dupont as well as Oakville, tree branches scattered down in many locations for sure, and that of course is also responsible for the power outages across the area. So St. Clair County, you still have your tornado warning. We still have our tornado warning down here in Reynolds County. Those are the places in particular, central Reynolds County and southeastern or central portions of St. Clair County, Belleville, over towards New Baden. We want you to be in your safe place inside, away from windows and doors as these storms are rolling through. The potential for the hail and the wind still there. And again, as Gary was talking about, as we go down to the south and southwest of St. Louis, does this become a line that just starts pushing out 60, 70, 80 mile per hour winds? That's entirely possible because the ingredients are certainly there. And then you have to watch for the storms that are out ahead of that are individual storms, like the one that's starting to develop over there towards Carbondale. They have access to better air and they're better able to rotate on their own, which creates that dangerous twisting and creates the problems there. So right now, it's east of St. Louis and south of St. Louis, where the worst of the weather is. We still have some large hail in these storms. We still have strong winds with these storms. Potentially there are pockets where there could be some rotation here, although, Gary, I don't think we're seeing as much as we were along this line, but that's where the concern has been with the rotation in these storms. And of course, that's why that tornado watch was issued earlier today.
Yeah, and exactly right. We've got this tornado watch that's still in place until 11 o'clock, just to kind of reset you here. As we look at what's going on right now, we have 2 tornado warnings in our area. That's why we continue to keep you posted here until 7 o'clock. That's where those tornado warnings are. This is a PDS Tornado Watch, which means particularly dangerous situation. They're kind of an elevated tornado watch from the Storm Prediction Center because of the ingredients that are available. And right now, what we're noticing is this is transitioning, as Scott and I have been mentioning here, to maybe we're starting to see maybe a couple of things here, and I want to zoom out and show you. This is the area that, if we're looking at this particular line, I think we have the likelihood for brief, smaller tornadoes. As we see the leading edge of things, you're going to start to see little things like this, where right about here near Belleville, you'll see these little notches here and there. If you want to pull back in for me, Eric, just so I get this full screen, so we don't get people squinting here, because I want to point out some of these things here. You'll see these little notches here. Watch, and those are the types of things, even near New Athens. those are the areas that we're watching where we may see those brief, smaller tornadoes. We don't like to call them weak. I don't like to call them isolated because that makes it sound like they're not impactful. These storms are very impactful. This system hasn't weakened, but this kind of transitioned to a new part of it. Now, the other end of the spectrum, where the ingredients are a little more favorable, near Farmington, near Fredericktown, near Perryville, Chester, 12 Mile, and Lesterville and Reynolds County, where we have that active tornado warning until 7 o'clock. Notice how, at least at one point, these storms were by themselves. Now they've kind of merged a little bit, but this is the area where it's more favorable for a longer track, stronger tornado. Doesn't mean that's happening right now, but this is the area that we're looking for. So as we look at the two, how does this line morph and impact? Does it continue? Does it end this sort of longer track tornado threat here at this point? That's what remains to be seen. But you'll notice how they're kind of by themselves now. They've kind of joined. They still have areas of rotation, and there are two separate tornado warnings, one of them out of our area, one of them in it. And to the south, you'll notice that purple pinkish polygon. That's the confirmed tornado. It's out of our area, but we've already seen one of those today from a radar confirmation standpoint. But you'll look at some of these areas here, and like I mentioned, when it comes to spots like Belgrade here and Potosi, you know, these are these little, you know, notches in here, even into Bonne Terre. You know, nothing too significant, right? But I talked about how the wind, the outflow wind from this, how's it going to impact this line of storms, and we'll see if that's the case here from Bonne Terre north of Farmington, where we see this burst of wind, which is bright and significant from Maystown, Prairie du Rocher, Redbud right now, New Athens. That's where the most significant wind is right now, where you're looking at 60 to 70 mile an hour wind. So regardless of tornado, this is significant because we've also seen golf ball size hail. So this is causing a lot of issues here, even as I scan this entire line of storms. And notice where you'll see from Trenton here on 64 north of Mascoutah, that's where we have those little notches. And that's the type of tornado that we may be transitioning to in that area, where they're maybe smaller and impactful, but they're going to be different than tornadoes that are on the ground for a while. They're going to be ones that are on the smaller side, but still creating some wind damage. So right now, as we have that tornado warning that's still in place, and you know, it's not going to be for much longer here with this storm as it's continued to race, but I still think that that's probably where this is right now. We'll see what they do with this downstream here as we have that, you know, at the very least, and you'll see that here, that new tornado warning now here as we continue to see that. So that's my latest update, and Scott's got another update as well. So
yeah,
that's the one for Randolph, St. Clair till 7:45 now.
So what we're transitioning to, Gary's talking about this now, we're transitioning from having the one storm with a hook to having a storm with a bunch of notches on it, and each one of those capable of producing brief spin-up tornadoes. And because of that, the National Weather Service, instead of trying to track each one of these individual spin-ups as they happen and then they go away and then another one pops up, what they've done is they've gone ahead and issued a tornado warning here to include Randolph County, eastern portions of St. Clair County, and then Washington, looks like Washington and Clinton County, basically for all of these spin-ups that are going to be developing along this area. That's the anticipation. So that's why they did that warning that's so big. It's not that there's one tornado, but it's the fact that this line is pulsing out and we're transitioning to what we call the QLCS, or it's a quasi-linear system. And along it, you've got all these little vortices and all these little spinning things at the leading edge of this, and each one of them is capable of producing a tornado, which would cause localized damage and probably last, you know, 2 to 4 minutes at the most, but it would be enough to cause problems. So that's why you have now from Carlisle to Nashville down to Sparta, you have this very large tornado warning now because of this transition here of the storm system from being the individual cells to being this wavy line of storms as it's rolling in. So still treat it seriously. You still want to be inside. You still want to be away from windows and doors. This is not the type of storm that's going to produce one of those long track, really intense tornadoes. They're brief, they spin up, they zip in, they zip out, they do their damage. But outside of that, you also still have pretty strong winds associated with these thunderstorms of 60 to maybe 70 miles per hour. And we've also seen some pretty large hail with this at times, hail up to the size or larger than tennis balls. And right now it looks like the largest hail is here going on US 50 up there in northeastern portions of St. Clair County. If that keeps on its current trek, it would head over towards Trenton. So it's just through the Lebanon area and headed towards Trenton and Aveston, Illinois. So again, this whole line now prompting a tornado warning for a very large area of Clinton County, of Washington County, Illinois, and down into Randolph County. Not everybody in these counties will see a tornado. We haven't had that happen today. It's not going to happen with this. But that potential exists along the line to get those quick spin-ups, in addition to the potential of hail, larger than golf balls at times, as well as winds, perhaps 60 to 70 miles per hour or stronger. All of that potential is there out of these storms, and so that's why we want you in your safe place at this point. Now, we still have our tornado warning here down in Lesterville, and as we kind of go south here, we'll just kind of track this back. Still looking at those stronger storms in Jefferson County, but here's down in Reynolds County, where we still have a bit of a circulation showing up here that's crossed over Highway 21. That's moving towards the east, so just looking on a straight line, again, you're in very rural areas here, of Reynolds County and Iron County, but that's on a direct path to perhaps impact the area around Annapolis. We also have a couple more cells that are a little farther south. They could impact southern portions of Reynolds County, but it looks like the rotating part of those cells would likely stay just to the south of Reynolds County. So that's where we are with these storms right now. And Gary, here's kind of the summary of all of it. New big tornado warning, Randolph County, Eastern St. Clair County, Washington, Clinton counties in Illinois. That's because we're looking at little spin-up potential tornadoes now. We don't have the big hooks. We're not seeing the hooks anymore. We don't have individual storms. These are going into a line of storms. You're going to see those little spin-ups from time to time, or at least that potential. Outside of that, we also have winds that are gusting 50, 60, 70 miles per hour. So our number of power outages growing across the region. We've had some really large hail reported, larger than tennis balls with these storms. So, you know, you've got hail damage, you have wind damage, there's the potential, we've got some tornadoes, couple of trees down on homes in Dupo, report of a tree down on a house in Oakville. That's just some of what we've seen so far, and those reports tend to lag a bit behind. Plus, we've also seen the flooding on some of the highways, 55 down at Carondelet, some significant ponding of the water there that snarled the traffic there, and I think it shut down the interstate. Maybe back open, I don't know, but that's one of those things where, you know, in construction zones especially, water doesn't drain. So a lot of problems with this band of storms sliding through the area, Gary.
Yeah, and just to kind of update you on what's going on, like you mentioned, the leading edge of this is starting to have this one big tornado warning. So if you're just following along why we have this one big tornado warning, we'll talk about the county specifically, but I want to look at some of these areas. We talk about these little areas of this notch where it's not that big defined hook that we talk about. And it's areas like this right here. You'll see that. We watch on the leading edge of this, there's little minor spin-ups, and that's where we see that potential. And as I continue to zoom down, we see this near Albers, right on 64, little areas like this, where we see maybe the wind come in. There's these minor areas of rotation along a straight burst of wind, and that's where you see these brief spin-up tornadoes. That's what we talk about them so often, where we try to classify and explain the difference between long-track rotating storms and these brief, you know, the QLCS term's kind of an inside baseball thing. We're not going to sit there and draw this for you, but that's where we get these little minor spin-up tornadoes where you'll still see it's pretty straight here, so that's okay. That doesn't mean we don't have wind threat, but as we kind of look here, notice how even there, we start to see these little notches in between. And when we get those, they're tight enough. That's where we see that potential for those rotating storms here, even near Prairie du Rocher. So as we look back up, that's why we have one big tornado warning here. And you're starting to see these little kind of in between right here, just things like that, where, yes, there's that minor inflow still, and we have those little brief tornadoes. This is not some big, you know, earlier it almost looked like a thumb here where we had a very wide area where there was clearly a radar confirmed tornado and a debris signature. We don't necessarily have that right now. It doesn't mean that it won't happen, but that's why we have this wide area of a tornado warning that is really from many areas in the Metro East all the way down to about St. Genevieve here. And then, of course, we still have the one in Reynolds County. But notice how those storms are by themselves. They're away from this big line. That's where the smaller tornadoes like that are occurring as this line. Obviously, it's still red, that deep red here. Still, there's not much weakening with this. But one positive I can tell you here from St. Louis, St. Charles, Gasconade, Franklin, the tornado watch has been canceled once this has moved through. And there's still some significant rain falling, but now we're transitioning to most of this in the Metro East, most of this to Farmington, Reynolds County, Iron County for our tornado threat as we monitor these little tiny areas inside, and you continue to track them, Scott.
Yeah, in fact, you know, we're talking about the individual storms that are down to the south of St. Louis and those being more conducive to creating the tornadoes. We can tell those storms, they have different environment to work in. And that storm that we were talking about a little while ago over by Carbondale, that's gone with a confirmed tornado now. So, you know, they are producing problems and they are causing issues here. This storm now moving into the Annapolis area has torrential rain, maybe some gusty winds. It doesn't have a tornado warning on it just yet. There is still this tornado warning, but you know, the presentation from the radar standpoint is not as significant as it was earlier. There's still likely at least some small hail in this cell as well. So this whole line is going to continue to advance to the east and southeast. And you know, you're still getting some heavier rain out around Augusta, out here in St. Charles County. It's still raining pretty hard across much of southern Franklin County, even into St. Louis County. That just exacerbates the problems we have with water right now in those poor drainage areas and the fact that the ground is saturated. So certainly, you know, especially trying to drive in some of the poor drainage areas, some urban flooding problems. But it's the tornado potential here along this leading edge where we have these potential spin-up tornadoes now. Instead of the individual storms, which are capable of those longer track, larger tornadoes, now we're talking about the little spin-up tornadoes, in addition to those strong winds of 60 to 70 miles per hour. We still have that severe thunderstorm warning here for portions of Monroe County into Randolph County as well, but kind of superseded that with the tornado warning as that storm's moving off towards the east into the southeast. But again, as it's coming into Breeze, as it's coming into Carlisle Lake, as it's rolling up here towards through Greenville. Greenville's had some 40-mile-per-hour winds, the best we could tell, but it's getting near Vandalia, and it's anywhere along this line, especially as you get from Carlisle Lake going south, where the potential for something to spin up is a little bit greater. And that's why you have that broad tornado warning for several areas, and much larger than a normal tornado warning because there's too many of those little spinning things on the edge of the storm to be able to track them effectively. So that's why you have the big, broad tornado warning. Not that everybody's going to have a tornado. Most don't get a tornado, but everybody is going to get drenched. Everybody is going to see torrential rain, at least for some period. Many will see hail. Some will see really large hail, and some will see really strong winds with this. All right, we go back down here to the south, and again, those severe thunderstorm warnings, now St. Genevieve, St. Francis County, back into Washington County, again, coming into the Bonne Terre area, coming in towards Farmington. You're going to be talking about 60, maybe 70-mile-per-hour winds with some of these as they push on in. That will create some additional power outages as well. As we work our way back down towards the tornado warning here, looks like we do have a new tornado warning that kind of tags on with the other one that was in effect here across Reynolds County. So most of the southern two-thirds of Reynolds County now under that tornado warning, as it looks like there's another storm there that is creating additional spin, and that's close to that Ellington area. So again, the back edge of this that's approaching Ellington, that looks like that could be not one of those little spin-up tornadoes, but something a little more significant. So if you're in the Ellington area, you would want to be in your safe place right now. This whole line of storms continues to track off to the east. And as we put it into motion, you can see it's moving about 40 miles per hour. Probably about an hour and a half from now, It'll be out of our area and won't be our problem, but it's going to be a problem for areas farther east and southeast. Your tornado warning includes all of Clinton, all of Washington County in Illinois, eastern portions of St. Louis, St. Clair County rather, and then down into Randolph County in Illinois. And again, that's because of all of those little spinning circulations along the leading edge of that line of severe thunderstorms and their capability of producing brief spin-up tornadoes, which causes localized damage where you can get some quick 70 to 80 mile per hour winds in a very small area for a very brief period of time. So this line's on the move. That's the good thing. We won't have to deal with it all night long. But Gary, we're still tracking problems out there.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're transitioning to is the wind damage threat. And I'm going to show you this real quickly. I do want to mention a few areas that have been removed from the tornado watch so you can kind of get back to normal here, but there's still, look at all these tornado warnings that are in our area and the tornado watch that's still in place until 11 o'clock. What I want to point out as we look at this line, a lot of it may kind of, where are the warnings at right now? It's really hard to see. We got a lot of polygons. I'm going to clear all of them away for you, and I want to show you this one big tornado warning until 7:45, Clinton, Randolph, St. Clair, Washington. As Scott mentioned earlier, and if you're just kind of joining us, it's because we have all these small little rotating areas along this. And I want to draw this for you where you start to see more of them here as this tornado warning right here, those little inlets here on the leading edge of this line where the wind is blowing. And as I continue to kind of zoom out, you'll see this here just south right near Oakville. That's another one. We see these little tiny inlets. They're small. They're not that big area where we saw the tornadic debris signature on, or it's actually a little straighter here from Baldwin Prairie to Rocher, but this to me is where the most significant wind threat is. So you just cue this right now from a radar standpoint, it's showing me about 85 to 90 mile an hour wind, and while that's still 1,000 feet or so, about 2,000 feet above the surface, that is a significant wind threat. And I know it's a little further away from the radar, but it's not that far. So that's something to really pay attention to. That's where the strongest wind is here at this moment. So from Baldwin, I think this is where you're probably going to see, the significant issues here as we watch throughout the next several hours. Breeze here, that's where, once again, this is a 60 to 70 mile an hour wind, but that's where the strongest wind here, in my opinion, is. Just looking at this from Redbud to Hecker, that's where we're probably seeing the most significant wind, at least from a radar standpoint, but most likely, even if it's mixing down to the surface at 70 miles an hour, it's causing a lot of issues here. So as we look at the potential for, those little brief, weak tornadoes on the leading edge of things, I think the wind damage threat is still going to be something that we kind of monitor here as we look at some of this here. And like you mentioned, we're still looking at many spots here right now as you look at that latest tornado warning here that is for Iron, Reynolds, and areas to the south here. So that's kind of a part of that same storm, Scott, that's kind of got 3 different polygons on it. And sometimes it's hard to digest, but we're going to do our best to kind of go from top to bottom with all the threats here that are still going on throughout our area.
Yeah, and we have the new tornado warnings here. Basically, we've extended the National Weather Service has extended the one here for this storm in Reynolds County over to include southern portions of Iron County. So that does include the Annapolis area. You'll remember last week, Annapolis hard hit by some of those, or a week and a half ago, hard hit by some of those tornadoes there. That also includes southwestern portions of Madison County in Missouri. This is well south of St. Louis. And then the southern portions of Reynolds County. We had it going down to about Ellington. Now it goes from Ellington south to the county line because we still have this spin coming very close to Ellington right now. It's showing a circulation in here. Your radar presentation, when we look at the winds on this, you're not going to see as much this far away. It's hard to find those circulations because we're looking way high up in the clouds. So we're not near the ground as we are when we're around the St. Louis area. So that's always a bit of a problem when we get into the distance. But you folks should be in your safe place now. That's a very rural area of Reynolds County and Iron County. Meanwhile, as we go into Clinton, as well as Washington County and down here into Randolph County, I think your tornado threat's pretty much over here across eastern portions of St. Clair County as that leading edge where we would see some tornadoes spinning up has now pushed into Washington County and has cleared most of the St. Clair County line and now pushing into Randolph County. But that's an area here where, again, we watch for those potential spin-ups along the leading edge. And Gary just went through all of that, how each one of those notches has that potential to spin. Now, as we go farther south, we still are picking up the stronger winds here. So your severe thunderstorm warnings for St. Genevieve, St. Francis, Washington counties, they continue here. Again, this is squally weather, and it is producing some very strong winds. We're talking maybe 60 to 70 mile per hour winds. We're definitely talking that as we get up closer here over towards Breeze and near Carlisle Lake, and then in that area that's approaching Sparta, and in this area that is over towards Lebanon and Oakville right now. Strong, intense winds rolling through those areas right now. That's going to increase the number of power outages in those areas. On the Missouri side, we don't have that many power outages being reported on the Illinois side just yet. They usually take a little bit to filter in. So we haven't seen the numbers for that, but we do know we saw some improvement in the outages in St. Charles County, but St. Louis County and the city of St. Louis, Jefferson County, Franklin County, I think we're somewhere around 16,000, 17,000 customers without power. So that's a sizable number of folks that don't have power right now. And now with these storms pushing into the Metro East and those strong winds continuing to move to the east along this, plus the potential that you're embedding in these areas, some stronger thunderstorms, and maybe even an isolated tornado or two, you know, we're going to see additional power outages here off to the east of St. Louis. Here's one of those nudges coming in towards the Oakville area and right along the Kaskaskia River there, along Highway 160. You're looking at some hail, probably to the size of quarters or golf balls. Just west of Carlisle, you're also looking at some hail, probably to the size of quarters and maybe up to golf balls. So along here, we have these notches that are showing up. Any one of those notches at any moment could ingest that dangerous twisting wind and create one of those brief spin-up tornadoes. But outside of that, we're also looking at the really strong winds in here. 60 to 70 mile per hour winds showing up, indicated by the radar. And a lot of that is in fact reaching the ground because we're getting reports of tree branches down and we're getting reports of some damage. And we're going to see the power outages follow that as all of this pushes off to the east. The strong winds and the large hail becoming as much of a threat as any brief spin-up tornado would be at this point for that area. And again, going down to the south, just one last look, and I'll get it back over to Gary here. You know, here's a different view looking down into portions of Iron and Reynolds County where we have the tornado warnings in effect. The circulation's maybe not as tight. There's something that's a little tighter there around Ellington, but I'd be in my safe place here. A basement's best. If you don't have a basement, as many walls between you and the outside as possible, Gary.
Yeah, and as we continue to monitor that threat overall, I think this is to some degree turning into where we're going to see a lot more damage because of the straight line wind than anything, right? While we're still under that tornado watch, that's actually been extended for Clay County, Illinois until 1 o'clock in the morning. That's the one county. I think it's going to get there a lot sooner, but they're in part of a bigger warning regardless. What I want to talk about is how we still see that potential for those little leading edge notches, but still the wind threat is really significant here as we kind of zoom in, and you can see that new severe thunderstorm warning that just got issued from Mount Vernon. But we see this bigger hail that Scott has mentioned where you see these deep purples, and regardless of whether or not you're seeing marble, quarter-sized hail, you're probably seeing a lot of it because we have these storms that are well over 40 to maybe even 50,000 feet in some cases. As we look at the leading edge of this, watch how this is straightened out. And I know that this near Ellis Grove, that's probably the one area that I think that maybe has that little bit of a notch. But watch how straight this is, and that indicates that the wind is getting more significant. And you can see this here. Behind this, we have seen between 75 to almost 90 mile an hour wind that is queued up on the potential for some of this here. And so, like I mentioned, this is the area where we probably have the biggest wind threat right now. And even what I've noticed here behind this into Carlisle is watch how some of the brighter shades on the radar are starting to pick up where that's where we see the 60, 70, 75 mile an hour wind, even into Oakville. That's where we're probably starting to see the most damage and widespread damage. So in Centralia, that's what's working its way out of our area. But like Scott mentioned, is Carlisle Lake. You see this, and behind this, the significant wind threat that we have to deal with here. Prairie du Rocher, you still have this tornado warning that's in place as it crossed the river, but like from a big picture standpoint, this is the area with the most significant wind here at this moment, as we still see the leading edge where a couple of these storms here into Reynolds County have still created some pretty large hail, as we've had a couple of reports. I just got a picture that we'll share with you, I'm sure, at some point later, of some very large hail that's upwards of golf ball size or greater. But it's just, what stands out to me is just how straight that this is kind of bowing out. And maybe it's not bowing in the sense where it looks like the bow here, but it's so straight where we'll start to see those notches on the leading edge. But there are a couple of them. But man, right now, to me, this looks like 70 to 80 mile an hour wind threat here is going to be something that we may have to monitor as this moves south. It's not weakening at all from that standpoint, Scott. Behind it, you know, the rain is coming to an end, but that leading edge as it works its way into the Metro East, to Mount Vernon, to Carlisle, to Farmington even, that leading edge here in the Metro East just across the river, it looks like it's going to create some pretty significant wind.
Yeah, and not only the significant wind, but the hail has been huge. In some cases, we've had over tennis ball size hail reported. This looks like peas to maybe nickels. Where was this?
Belleville.
Belleville. Yeah, and we did get reports of quarter-size hail in Belleville. We've had reports of, you know, hail up to the size of tennis balls with this as it was pushing through. Now, we do know that St. Clair County, we're now up over 2,000 customers without power in St. Clair County.
Yes, we got Bond, Marion, Fayette until 7:45 now. You'll see that.
Okay. So we just kind of tack on here, just this part of the line here that's around Carlisle Lake up towards Greenville. They're just moving that over, so the southern portions of Fayette, and that's south of Vandalia. So Vandalia, you're not technically in this tornado warning. And again, we're talking about the brief spin-up tornadoes at the leading edge of this, in addition to the strong winds. So you've added Marion County to this. We've added southern portions of Fayette County and southeastern portions of Greene County, because there's a nudge coming in just east of Carlisle Lake and over southeast of Greenville. That's near Tamalco. That's going to head towards Kaskaskia. Patoka, you're in the path of that eventually, this whole line. So is Kimunday and Salem. Everyone along Interstate 57 is basically going to see this line in our viewing area before the evening is done, probably in the next hour, 90 minutes or so. And with this line, we're still seeing right there, Carlisle, up through Carlisle Lake, still seeing really large hail. We're still seeing really strong winds in this. As Gary pointed out a few minutes ago, there may be more than 70 mile per hour winds in this. That's going to drown down some tree branches, that'll down some power lines, and there'll be more power outages. And that's part of the reason, as we kind of scan it from a different side. This is the viewpoint out of the Evansville radar, looking back to the west. And you can see along some of those nubbies, you've got some little circulations showing up there, some little brighter spots that are more concerning. So that's why we have the new tornado warning that includes Salem, it includes Kimunday, Marion County in Illinois, and southern portions of Fayette County. It doesn't include Vandalia, but the areas south of Vandalia. And again, anywhere along this line, you have the potential of seeing something spin up. There's something there, you know, a little suspicious there, just off to the southeast of Prairie du Rocher, just north of Chester. But once again, the other thing too is when you look at something like this, that's near Ellis Grove, it may be a radar artifact. We don't know if it's something that's real, a real circulation or not, and they happen so fast. The reality is you should be in your safe place at this point, anywhere from Randolph County up to the northeast ahead of this line of thunderstorms, which is producing large hail and it is producing damaging winds. And it occasionally has produced, we have one confirmed radar confirmed tornado earlier that the National Weather Service will go out and look at. We also know that we had a couple of trees down reported by emergency managers over in Dupo, and we also had a tree reported down in Oakville. And that's probably just the beginning of some of the damage. We don't have all of the damage information yet. It takes time for that to filter in. And of course, our first responders have been busy. These things are just loaded with lightning as well. So we've had a lot of lightning calls for your first responders today too. Another tornado warning here. And again, these cells are starting to get really messy. They were more individual supercell type storms farther south of St. Louis, and now they're congealing into a larger cluster. And so we still have some circulations here working across southeastern and southern portions of Reynolds County where we still have those tornado warnings. And we still have the tornado warning in effect for southern portions of Iron County as well. We'll try to get a picture here. We're on the Paducah radar looking back, and we can see that there's still some pretty intense winds there, and there may be some rotation in there, but it's not clear cut. But that's because the radar beam is so high. You're down in this very rural area of southeast Missouri, and you're away from most of the radar sites in general. So you're far enough away where the beams are all shooting very much on the high side. We still have a lot of rain happening around the metro area right now, and that includes even back into St. Charles County. We've seen upwards of more than 2 inches. We had tree limbs down in Cottleville. We had tree limbs down in St. Peters. We still have heavy rain south and southeast of St. Louis, but it's the tornado warnings that we're concerned about. Southern portions of Fayette County, southeastern portions of Bond County. That takes us just outside of Greenville, off to the east and southeast, just to the south of Vandalia, Patoka, Kaskaskia, right down 51 towards Centralia to Malco, and this area here around Carlisle Lake still getting blasted, it looks like, with hail and some strong winds. And again, there's a nubby coming up here. Whenever you've got one of these nubs, you may be ingesting that twist and you can get a quick spin-up tornado there. So because there are so many of these that have been appearing on the radar screen and on ahead of this line of thunderstorms, the National Weather Service has one big tornado warning to encompass all of that. So not everybody is going to see a tornado, but many of us, if not most of us, are going to get the strong winds with these storms, as we've seen across the metro area, as this line continues to march on to the east. And you see how it's really bowing out here, a clear signature that the winds are pushing with this storm, and the damaging winds are becoming a bigger threat with this storm on a more widespread basis than those isolated tornadoes, despite the fact that we have tornado warnings in effect. Now, in those tornado warning areas, you want to be inside, away from windows and doors, center part of your house, lowest floor, and a bathroom or closet's a great thing. And Gary, always, we're wearing our shoes, you wear your shoes.
Absolutely. We're prepared. We're getting closer to the tail end of this. And for a lot of you, you are in the tail end of this. Pretty much on the Missouri side, a good majority of our counties are either out of the tornado watch or trending out of it. But you can see those several areas that everywhere in red that's in our area is under a tornado warning until 7:45. And it's that broad area of tornado warnings because of those brief spin-up tornadoes. And then this area to the south here in Reynolds and Madison, that's till 7:45 as well. It's a very tiny area that's involved in this, but it's something to pay attention to. And there still are two types of kind of setups where we have these storms that have been kind of on their own and they look more like these, but where they're kind of by themselves. That's where the long track, stronger tornadoes were probably more likely to the south. But now that we have this line that's raced out ahead and kind of caught up with some of those areas, now we're looking at how they're going to interact with each other. And I think this is transitioning to more of a straight line wind threat, which in reality probably still is more impactful for a lot of us when it comes to trees down. And the leading edge of this big tornado warning that's in place until 7:45 still has these tiny little areas involved in it where if we get that behind, as we have that leading edge wind, that's where we may start to see some of that rotation and those brief tornadoes. We talk about them. I don't like to say isolated. I don't like to say weak. Tornadoes are going to be impactful, but they're brief. They're not on the ground for a while. They may only last sometimes less than 5 minutes, but they will do damage. And that's why we're on with you through the race as we continue to look at this leading edge line. This is where the most significant wind is right now. We're somewhat upwards of 70 to perhaps 80 mile an hour wind. I mean, it's pretty significant. In fact, so much so that I know that the radar may be spitting out some anomalous data and some different colors, but I'll tell you what, it's been pretty consistent where it's 70 to maybe 85 to maybe 90 mile an hour wind, just 1,000 feet above the surface, which when we look at the setup and ingredients for this for the last 36 hours, that was the most striking thing and one of the reasons that we have this. Also, and I know that this is a little further from this particular radar beam, but I just want to point this out because the reason we have had these tornado warnings, look on the leading edge of it where we have this green, and that's a different direction for the wind. And when it meets that leading edge wall of wind and you have that different wind direction, that's where we see that little bit of spin, and that's that wind shear that we see, and that's where those brief tornadoes originate from, and that's why we have this big warning. But I think right now, really, this is from Carlisle. You'll see that significant wind on 161, on 50. That's where we're probably seeing the most of this. But if we're going to pick maybe an area that has any sort of rotation where we have that brief tornado, that's, I would say, just south here on 51, just off, I would say, about 5 miles away from Salem here. That's where the wind is picking up. That's probably our most likely brief tornado here at this moment. But overall, it's this wide area here so far as we look at our multiple tornado warnings still in place. The wide area where we start to see these leading edge little notches right here, right here near, like I mentioned, right here, right, especially south of Vandalia right there. Those are the little small areas on the leading edge of this line, even let's call it near Nashville as well, those little small areas, that's where the potential for tornadoes are on the leading edge of this. We have that straight line wind threat with 70 to perhaps 80-mile-an-hour wind, not out of the question. As that interacts with a different wind direction, as that pushes out, that's where storms occur. That's where we see that spinning, thus the big tornado warning that we have, Scott. And I still think that while we've passed the hump for a lot of our area, this is still creating some significant issues because it's running into that favorable environment, and it shows no signs of slowing down in terms of strength.
No, and the upper levels are supporting all of this too. As you talked about, the winds are favorable in the upper levels, and this thing just keeps marching off to the east. Now, we have trimmed that tornado warning, so western portions of Clinton County and far western portions of Washington County now out of that, northern portions of Randolph County no longer in the tornado warning, but it continues for Nashville, Illinois, and then heading over towards Kim Monday, towards Patoka. And again, as Gary was pointing out, you've got all these nudges, and this is a lot of wind and hail that's combination pushing through northeastern portions of Clinton County. And your farm fields over here, in many cases, are saturated to begin with, and now you're adding this to it. So our poor farmers, it's been a rough spring for them trying to get planting even done, and if they did get it done, then to have this mess come through. So Centralia over to Salem, you still have in northern portions of Jefferson County a severe thunderstorm warning there. And as we just kind of work our way down the line, these storms are strong. There is no question about that. As we get farther to the south, we still have for far southern portions of Iron County here, including Annapolis, we have that tornado warning. But the rotation in that storm is about to move into southern portions of Madison County, and once it does that, then we'll be done with that tornado warning. We're still tracking the storm down here in southern portions of Reynolds County, and you're saying, good grief, Reynolds County's a long way away from St. Louis. Well, yeah, you're right, but you know what? This is part of our viewing area, and the folks in Ellington are important as well, so we want them to be safe and stay safe, and so that storm potentially has some rotation with it and could be causing some problems there. So that's why the tornado warning is in effect there. You should be in your safe place. We're still looking at the rain around the metro area. Off to the east, it's really right along the leading edge of this, where not only do we have the torrential rain, but we have hail and we have really strong winds here. And you're seeing the winds here. Upwards of 60 to 70 miles per hour probably within the storm. I'm going to broaden this to a different perspective. And again, looking at the radar out of Evansville back towards the leading edge of these storms, and you see those brighter blues, that's indicative of those stronger winds associated with these thunderstorms, 60 to 70 mile per hour winds. We know we have over 2,000 customers without power now in the Belleville area. So we're definitely at that point with these storms as we continue in storm alert right now. Leading edge, pushing into Salem, Centralia, you're getting the heaviest rain. Probably the worst part of this storm with a nub there showing up close to Salem. We might have some kind of rotation going on here. There might be some kind of rotation up this way towards Kaskaskia. And again, they're small tornadoes. They hit very quickly. They localize any damage. But then when you take into account the fact that the rest of this area may be seeing 50, 60, perhaps stronger mile per hour winds, and the fact that the ground is so saturated, so what normally a tree would be able to withstand In this particular case, the tree may not be able to withstand roots holding in the ground. You get those trees knocked over, and then we can have problems from there. So again, all along this line, the potential for spin-up tornadoes, they'd be brief, but all along this line, it's pretty widespread winds that are significant, along with the torrential rain and at times some hail. So that's why we had that large tornado warning in effect. Farther to the south, it's severe thunderstorm warnings down here for Farmington over to St. Genevieve. And Perryville, you're not in it yet, but you're about ready to get into that stronger storm. You might get a severe thunderstorm warning, but it doesn't look like there's anything rotating down that way right now. We just got to get the back edge of this stuff out of here, and that's going to take another hour or two before that happens, Gary.
Yeah, we're getting close, Scott, and we've continued to see the National Weather Service trim a few more counties off of that tornado watch. So I want to keep you up to date. Most of this tornado watch, which was a particularly dangerous situation tornado watch, this is kind of an elevated one, until 11 o'clock. So we don't see that too often here, right? We get tornado watches, but a significant one. And there are obviously several tornado warnings in place until 7:45 right now. That's where most of them are, and we're getting our way out of this thing. I would say we're about 65–70% out of the way. But some of the main storms that we still have to track, it's this one right here. We watched the leading edge of this, where that's the rotation, that little kind of thumb here. And other than just that straight line area where we're seeing more of just that straight line wind, we have these little areas where it's rotating. The wind is moving in a different direction, I would say just a few thousand feet above the surface, and that's where we start to see that. And you'll notice that it's not some well-defined, let's call it well-defined line. If we were just looking at this from a line standpoint, when we look at this from we talk about some of these storms bowing out, right? When we look at most of those, that's where the significant wind comes from. And it's similar, but watch how we still have some of these little notches. Here's one, and that's probably the one that I want to focus on the most, and I'll get to that in a second. But because it's kind of raggedy, let's just call it raggedy, that's why we start to see those brief tornadoes. That's why you have this big tornado warning in place right now, because you have these little minor areas of circulation which have the capability of producing those brief tornadoes. Otherwise, behind it, I mean, we still have some significant wind, and there still is this tornado warning that's in place for some of our area as well in Madison County for the next half an hour or so. But behind this is where we've had the most significant wind. And as we show you, I want to pop on where I think is probably the most likely area where we may see a rotating storm near Kinmundy, near Salem. And this is, oh my goodness, the radar colors. We switch from one radar to the other. I want to put both of them. Watch how I go from back and forth, right? Two different colors. Really, as we bounce from the St. Louis radar to the other radar here, what you'll notice here is we get those different colors. Still, it's on the higher end spectrum of the scale here. And that's where I think we're seeing the most significant wind right now, near Patoka, near Kerrigan, just outside. So if you're in Kinmundy, I still would like you to be in your safe space, because, and even into Salem as well, because I think we're going to see at the very least a gust upwards of 70 miles an hour is possible. In all likelihood, if you're in Kinmundy at the moment, or driving along 57, or know somebody that's driving along at this point, I think what you're likely seeing is a pretty good lowering shelf cloud or even wall cloud, depending on the situation. And that's indicative of the gust front that's settling in. And perhaps if we see that shelf cloud, or if we see that wall cloud, that could perhaps cause a tornado as well. But you know, like I said, you're going to see a lot of different colors along this radar like this. But that doesn't necessarily mean, even in near Vandalia, that doesn't necessarily mean, because we got to get in between those radars. But those are the areas we want to pay attention to specifically, simply because we have not only probably some larger hail here, where it's in that pink shade, that purple shade here, upwards of golf ball size at this, but we also see these little notches, like I said, right about here, right into Nashville, you know, so those are the areas on the leading edge that are responsible for this larger tornado warning that's in place. So this is south of Salem here. That's the area right there that I would think, if we're going to pick a spot for one of these brief tornadoes that's spinning up on the leading edge of this, that is where we're probably seeing it, Scott, as we're transitioning this almost out of our area. But still, this hasn't really weakened, and we've seen plenty of this here over the next 45 minutes at least.
Yeah, and we just got word from the folks over in Clinton County here, emergency managers telling the Weather Service that they have crews out. Multiple crews are responding to down power lines. So there's definitely damage there. There are definitely power outages here in the Metro East. We've had those reported. That leading edge has the strongest wind with it. It is being progressive, though. It's keeping on the move, so it's, you know, this isn't sitting over the same area for a continuous period of time. The rain does last for a few more hours, but, you know, the strong and severe thunderstorms, that's really about a half an hour, 45-minute deal. And really, it's the leading edge where you get the strongest of the wind, and then you'll get into that hail and the torrential rain. And right now, as Gary is pointing out, heading towards Kim Monday, that's where it looks like the largest hail is right now, along with the winds. So, you know, Pocahontas has had some good intense storms. You look over here towards Kaskaskia, Patoka. Patoka's probably getting some hail right now, and that's rolling towards Interstate 57. Salem has some flooding problems from time to time when it rains hard. This may be one of those situations around the Salem area since it is raining hard. We look farther to the south. We still have our tornado warning here for the southeastern portions of Randolph County. Beyond that, it's a severe thunderstorm warning going over towards Pinckneyville, and still the severe thunderstorm warning here down into St. Genevieve and parts of St. Francis County. Looks like the worst of this now is shifting off to the east of Farmington and really is focused in this area here, just to the southwest of St. Genevieve and kind of west of 55, where if there's going to be any hail, it's generally in this area, Mineth, Clearwater, River Ovaz, in those areas. And Perryville, you're going to get in on some of this as well as the storm continues to move down, but you don't have a warning in the Perryville area right now. As we go farther to the south, the tornado warning has been replaced with a severe thunderstorm warning around Ellington and over into southern portions of Iron County just for this last cell that's currently right over Ellington and moving east of Highway 21. That'll probably scoot over towards Annapolis and then into the rest of southern portions of Iron County. So that would be the last of the severe weather, we think, for that portion of our viewing area down to the south. And then we just kind of work our way back up. We're almost out of Randolph County. Give it another hour or so. And then our far eastern counties, we have about another hour or so to go with the damaging wind threat, along with the isolated tornadoes, those brief spin-up tornadoes that could pop in here anywhere along those nubs. You can spin something up. And, you know, it's one of those things, they don't last very long, but when they do touch down, they kind of enhance the wind damage in any one area. But, you know, straight line winds will do one thing, but you take the same speed of twisting winds, and it really does create some additional problems there. Back edge of the rain is getting closer into the metro area, and things will be settling down. At least our severe weather threat will be diminishing here over the course of the next couple of hours. And again, we've cleared out much of the areas north and west of St. Louis or west of St. Louis from any tornado watch. So the threat is really in the areas where you're seeing it now and where you have the torrential rain and the large hail and the strong winds. This, of course, is in the wake of what we saw this morning. And for those of you that weren't up early this morning, our friends down in Reynolds and Iron County had quite a morning of gusty winds and hail, and that pushed into St. Francis County and kind of fizzled a little bit, but that was all part of what came through St. Louis early this morning. And there was some thought that, well, perhaps that's going to be able to ease the pain for this afternoon. Well, that has not been the case, and this line of storms has formed ahead of the cold front. It's been very intense. We did have the one radar-confirmed tornado there a while ago. Back around South County, we've had trees down on houses in DuPont and Oakville, tree branches down, power outages. They're numbering in the tens of thousands across the area. Of course, our power crews remind you that if you are out and you encounter a down power line, to treat it as a live wire. Treat any down line as if it were a live wire. Stay away from it, report it as soon as you can, and let the proper authorities come and take care of it. So the strongest looking storm right now remains this storm that's around Salem up towards Kim Monday and Patoka. It is moving towards the east-northeast. That could get into Clay County here in a little bit, which is our far eastern county that we cover. So that's probably going to be our last warning of the day, Gary, as we watch this system finally slowly move out. But, you know, we look at the wind with this, and we're still, the winds on this are just incredibly strong, and maybe some sort of circulation.
Yeah,
We've got a little darker blue around Salem.
Yeah, that's what I think. That's why I kind of looked at specifically, and I wanted to show you that area right near Salem. And that's the one we've been tracking for a while. It was kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what the circulation was along this line, but we looked at, because I mentioned it was bouncing back and forth between two radars, and I still want to show that. But you can really see where the hail core is here and where the wind core is here. And that's what I want to zoom in and show you here, because even as you just kind of cue this up, I mean, it tells you that we've got this upwards of maybe perhaps upwards of 95 miles an hour. I mean, that's what this tells you. And not all the time would I show that, just because, you know, sometimes that doesn't mix down to the surface, but the reality is the conditions are more than favorable for that. So even if you're getting 80 miles an hour at the surface, that is what I think the circulation is right now. And this is on 57, so this could be causing some serious issues as it crosses the highway. But like Scott mentioned, this still is working into Clay County, so this is probably the biggest circulation for me. This is probably the one that's been the most significant probably in the last hour and a half, believe it or not. So even though it's working its way into another radar and it's well out of our area in the Missouri side, this is still probably a significant storm. And while we may not have eyes on it specifically, as it crosses Interstate 57, they're at least going to be able to see that. Some of the emergency managers giving us updates on that as well. This to me looks like the strongest storm of all of this here, as those leading edge areas into Salem. You'll notice that between Salem and Kinmundy, as it continues to work its way closer to maybe Flora. That's that last area that's going to be impactful here. This is the strongest part of the storm as it moves off to the east. So like I mentioned, this one specific area north of Salem has probably the strongest wind, where even just queuing it up from a radar standpoint is telling us that it's upwards of perhaps 90 plus miles an hour as we go back and forth to the other radar. You know, this is the most significant circulation that we've seen in a while here across 57. So when we look at this from Mount Vernon, right now this is another area, get into your safe space, because we still have the potential for even further down this line. We see these little notches here. That's what we look at for the potential for some of those brief tornadoes, but it's still probably, in reality, it's probably right about here. And that's where you see that downstream severe thunderstorm warning right now for areas in Clay County. So like I said, this is the most significant wind threat we have right now, but in terms of as this leading edge of the tornado warning that still goes for another 20 minutes or so, it's not out of the question that that won't be involved, but still from a standpoint of significant severe weather, the threat is winding down here at this moment for a lot of us, but still there are a small handful of counties here in Illinois that are part of our coverage area, and we're going to make sure that you're in good shape here as we have the potential for 70 to 80 mile an hour or even greater wind gusts in some isolated areas. And that includes Mount Vernon. And that's, even though we still have this tornado warning that's involved in Nashville, that was part of the bigger tornado warning that was in place because of these brief circulations on the leading edge of this system. And so that's what we're going to continue to monitor here as we look at that most recent severe thunderstorm warning. But still, some larger hail, possibly golf ball size in Kinmundy, and the leading edge of this still creating some maybe 70 to perhaps 80 mile an hour wind, Scott. I know it's kind of in no man's land between radars, but it's getting closer to the other one. So the fact that we still see that signature tells us that at the very least, the wind is still significant with this storm.
Yeah, very much so, and we're seeing it on both radars, and that vantage point is really honing in for us to this, you know, a significant storm, and potentially here that circulation near the area around Alma is really impressive at this point. So if I kind of change this, I don't know if my computer's going to let me do it, but if I put the velocity back on here, and I guess it's not going to let me do that. So anywho, we'll just scoot on down the line. But you folks there in the Alma area, that is a significant storm, okay? And we're seeing that circulation across that area kind of intensify a little bit, as Gary just showed you. So you definitely should be in your safe place there. We still have the intense weather here, eastern and southeastern portions of Washington County, then down into Perry County in Missouri, and then on down into parts of St. Genevieve County. It looks like the worst of it's now left the Farmington area. You still, for eastern portions of Randolph County, have that tornado warning, but that's the last of it. And it's unlikely this part of the storm there would be able to spin up a tornado. Now, as we go farther south, the tornado warning that was in effect down across parts of Iron and Reynolds County replaced with a severe thunderstorm warning, and now that severe thunderstorm is almost out of Reynolds County, not quite, almost. The worst of it is approaching Annapolis and south of Annapolis on Highway 49 as it continues to move east, and that'll slide on over and out of our viewing area as well. So the bottom line here is that these storms are still packing winds, somewhere in the estimated range of 70 to 80 miles per hour in a worst case scenario, particularly this storm here that's around Omega, Meacham, Kimunde, Alma. That's where circulation was really showing up in here within the last few minutes, and much more so than what we have seen out of this leading edge of the line. We knew that that possibility existed, but this was out of the leading edge of that line with these storms sliding on through. So again, right now we're just tracking these storms. We still have the severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings in effect at this point, and they are continuing to move off to the east, and this is probably our biggest problem area in here. And if we try to add the wind in there, let's see if it'll take it again. Again, that little area right there towards Omega, this is very concerning, Gary. So this area here, Omega up to Meacham, and we'll kind of get in a little bit tighter here, get you some roads. There's Omega Road going to the north, Brubaker Road off to the east, Albany Road to the north, O'Leary Road's up here. These are areas where you should be prepped for some significant wind moving in. Maybe it's twisting and maybe it's a brief tornado, but at the very least, this is significantly strong winds, certainly in excess of 60 miles per hour.
Yeah, and the positive news on the other standpoint is the fact that we continue to see more counties trimmed away from the tornado watch. That still remains in place until 11. I think more of those areas, once this storm finally pushes through, are going to be trimmed out of here pretty quickly. But still, it's in place. And we still have those tornado warnings that are still in place until 7:45 at this moment. So that's still another 13 minutes. But like we mentioned, it's these little specific areas right here. These are the little notches that I think this one right here is probably the most likely one that is causing some sort of issue here, when we're talking about any sort of tornado that, we at least have the potential for that. So as we look at that right now, that's still, to me, that's the area that we're looking at in terms of the potential for any sort of rotation here. You'll see the leading edge of this from Kinmundy, but it's still these little notches that are involved in this system, and it's right about here. That's where we're seeing that here as we continue to track this for you. But overall, I still think that we're still going to be looking at a lot of lightning here involved in this as well. So, but still, this is we've got this significant area right here, maybe into Mount Vernon. The clouds are probably lowering. You see this low, maybe wall cloud or shelf cloud at the very least, where you see this significant area. But right now, this is the area that we're looking at the moment as we continue to look at the potential for rotation along the leading edge of this from Kinmundy into Salem. And really the back edge of this, like I mentioned, the tornado watch is still in place until 11 o'clock for a few of these areas, but these are our last few tornado warnings that are still in place here as we look at the potential for this wind. And while this hasn't been issued as a tornado warning downstream, it still is an area of concern along the last couple of areas, even into Mount Vernon, almost out of our coverage area completely. But still, this is the last area that remains very strong, where we have that wind gust in excess of probably 70 miles an hour, perhaps 80, and it's that little area that still, for the next 11 minutes, is under that tornado warning and is still going to create some issues along the leading edge. But even looking into Mount Vernon, those are the last spots involved in that tornado warning, and that threat's going to be gone, and it's going to turn into more of a steady rain for the next couple of hours, perhaps.
Yeah, and Gary, just checking with the emergency managers and looking at power outages. I told you earlier about Clinton County having some significant power outages. There's over 4,000 customers in Clinton County without power right now. And so crews are out trying to assess that. Again, treat any down line, whether it's a power line, cable line, telephone line, you don't know what kind of line it is. treat any live wire that you, or any wire that you see down, any cable that you see down as a live wire, and don't get near it. We've also heard from our friends over in Salem at Emergency Management there that they have power lines down in the city of Salem and around the Salem area. And of course, that would jive very well with what's been going through with that storm that went through Salem and is now pushing up here through the Omega area and about ready to push into portions of Clay County and over towards Louisville and Flora and into that area. And as Gary was telling you, there is some tight circulation in there. So we could very well be looking at some spin-ups in here enhancing that wind damage, in addition to the fact that we think we have 60 to 70 mile per hour straight line winds on a pretty widespread basis. And given the fact our power outages and part of this whole system's part of the same aspect of this line, if you will, that came through Clinton County and is now working its way across northern portions of Marion County, and specifically here from Kimundi down to Omega, it is not pleasant, where it is drenching rain, there is hail, there is strong winds. Odds are power is going out or flickering in these spots, and that's what you have to look forward to in Clay County as this is pushing off towards the east. In fact, you look at it over the last hour, just how this has evolved and how it's pushing out, and that wind surge now pushing in towards Highway 45 in Clay County. It'll get there quickly. So if you're in Louisville down to Flora, you need to be in your place that is safe, away from windows and doors as these strong thunderstorms come rolling in. This is a severe thunderstorm warning over here in Clay County, including Flora, but that's a tornado warning still for Marion County. Now, we'll take a little different view of it here. And again, looking at that wind there near Songer, this is northwest of Xenia and south of Oskaloosa. You know, you may have some rotation in here. There may be some rotation up here. There's pockets here where those winds are just surging, and that can be a big problem. That can be those brief spin-ups that come through there. A little farther to the south, the storms here entering Interstate 64, moving across into Jefferson County. The tornado warning has expired in Washington County. The strongest storm, part of the storm, now entering Jefferson County in Illinois. We go a little farther to the south. We still have the last of the tornado warnings here down in southern portions of Randolph County, but it's less likely. We're looking at that threat, more of the strong gusty winds. Looks like we still have the Perry County now under a severe thunderstorm warning, and we have our last severe thunderstorm warning down
there it is in Clay. I was just about to kind of say, it seemed like it was imminent, but it's pretty obvious to me with the last scan there.
Yeah, and that's what we were just talking about. So Oskaloosa, Songer, Louisville, heading towards 45. Again, we popped that velocity signature on here, and that's pretty tight, especially for this type of system where you don't have, it's not the supercell type hook system. These are those brief spin-ups. This one may last a little longer than your typical brief spin-ups in this area. So here you are, Clay County, just coming out of Marion County in Illinois. This is going to be north of US 50, heading towards 45, Oskaloosa, over towards Louisville. There's very rural areas here, but there's Xenia, Iola Road, there's Kinmundi Road. These are the areas where you should be in your safe place right now, Gary, as this storm moves on in. And this ought to be our last tornado warning, I think, out of this system.
Yeah, I was just kind of taking a look at this while we were waiting for you and getting kind of things settled in. I was like, I'm surprised that this was not a tornado warning. And there are actually two circulations that we'll look at, but obviously this is the main one, right? And as we look at that specific circulation as part of a smaller tornado warning and part of a larger county-wide severe thunderstorm warning, I think there's probably two different things. And then also into Mount Vernon, it's also very important to talk about Mount Vernon because you're under a severe thunderstorm warning, but still, there is still a tornado warning that's still in place here from Steelville to Chester. But I wanted to look at the velocity product. I know it gets away from the radar. I'm not seeing anything that really indicates from a storm standpoint, structure standpoint, and also the velocity, even though it's in between radars and kind of a weird spot. I don't see anything that really it tells me that that's going to be extended any further than that. I do want to focus on this storm specifically as we start in Mount Vernon. Some of this wind is incredibly significant as there may be not that notch that's settling in, but look at the radars indicating, even though it's a few thousand feet above the surface, 86 to 90-mile-an-hour wind. And then this storm, like I mentioned, that seems like it's a pretty clear tornado to me, and that's where that tornado warning is in place. From Oskaloosa to Louisville, and then north of Flora, right across Highway 45. That's here in Clay County. That's the specific circulation right about here that we're going to look at. Also near Laclede, Iola, Blair. That's another one, and I know that's on the northern side of the county and probably not going to impact Clay County quite as much, but still, right along 57, I would still at least pay attention on the northern side of Clay County, and I know that's probably the extreme outer edge of our viewing area, but I just wanted to point out those two areas of circulation where the wind is incredibly strong. You can see those dark shades of blue right there. At the very least, it's at least the radar's queuing up at about 90 miles an hour. So at the very least, a wind damage threat is. But what tells me that this may be the tornado, and which is the reason that they have that sent from the National Weather Service here, is the fact that we have this little bit of an inflow here, and that's why we have that smaller polygon of that tornado warning that's right across 45 north of Flora here. And that's where I think we're probably going to be some significant damage. And it's not just obviously not a surprise, but I don't know this area specifically well, but there's definitely some rural component to it as well, where you're maybe going to be able to see that. It maybe not affect as many people, but certainly across the highway, once you get closer to 45 north of Flora, between here, that's where there are going to be a few more areas that are impacted. So we want to give you an update on that, because I think that's where we're going to see the most significant thing as we look at each radar scan. And as this gets closer to a different radar that's not St. Louis's, that's what tells us that this is an issue here. There also is more of a straight line component. You can see that here as I look into Mount Vernon, where we have wind, and once again, behind it, where those deeper shades of blue are, 80, 85. It doesn't mean it's blowing 85 at the surface. It could. That could mix down to the surface, but the wind is absolutely roaring above the surface where the radar is picking that up, and that is getting mixed down with the rain, with the downdrafts, and that's with some of the hail, and that's where we may see our widespread wind damage as we have that main area under that right now from Mount Vernon. You see that to the north, but there's that small, very small tornado warning. You can start to see that in notch here, and those are the types of tornadoes that we thought were more possible here in Illinois as the storm structure standpoint changed from longer track tornadoes to small, brief tornadoes along the leading edge of this line, as we're almost finally out of this.
Yeah, almost, not quite, but almost. But when this storm rolled out of Marion County and into Clay County, right there on US 50, reported from the emergency manager there that the winds were gusting 60 to 70 miles per hour. And in that Xenia area, they did have a lowering of the clouds that they could see, but the rain was obscuring it. So, this is definitely, as we look at this, clearly there's that circulation in there. It's headed just north of Flora, just towards Louisville. We put that wind on there, and it's just it's impressive circulation here. You need to be in your safe place. This will be the last of it. We've added power outages back to the west. Additional power outages have been reported now in parts of Marion County as well as Fayette County, to go along with extensive power outages being reported in Clinton County on the Illinois side. So now on our Illinois side, I think it's more than 10,000 customers that are without power, and I think we're going to add to that with these 50 to 70 mile per hour winds or stronger, and the potential of rotation here in and around just north of Flora, it looks like, heading along Highway 45. So if we just kind of get in a little bit tighter on this, if the computer will let me go in, and I've about worked this iPad to the end of its battery life today. But this is where this is tracking. And, it's over rural farm fields, and, you don't have a lot of population here, but Silver Bell Lane, Lincoln Road, there's Highway 45. This area here is rural portions of Clay County. But you should be in your safe spot at this point as this potential rotation slides across your region. It will cause wind damage even if it doesn't produce a tornado. There's no question about that. And, you're talking about wind damage here with these storms. Elsewhere, we come back into the metro area. We still have torrential rain here across Washington and Clinton counties, but the severe weather threat is over. I think the severe weather threat is really winding down here in eastern Marion County as the worst of this is now pushing to the east, and obviously that circulation that's headed over just to the northwest of Florida clearly shows up again right in that area here, and that's pretty close to Hoosier, pretty close to Louisville, and right coming across Highway 45, US 45 there. So this is the area where you should be in your safe place. This is the last of what we think will be the significant severe weather across our area for this system. The rest of the severe thunderstorms to the south are pushing out of our area. The one here in Jefferson County, Illinois is moving out of the part of Jefferson County, Illinois that can watch Channel 5. The part of the storm here in Perry County in Missouri is moving out of the part of Perry County where you can get the over-the-air signal of Channel 5. So this is pushing away from us our last storm of concern, the tornado warning here in Clay County, central portions of Clay County. Emergency manager reported 60 to 70 mile per hour winds. That was just with the winds, not necessarily a tornado on US 50 as it was crossing out of the Marion County line into Clay County, Illinois. So Gary, definitely a storm not to take lightly.
Yeah, and I mean, it's shown significant wind throughout, and that's one of the main reasons that we were talking about this secondary round as the sun came out earlier. As some of us are still under this tornado watch, it does seem like it's not going to make it till 11. This was a particularly dangerous situation, tornado watch, because earlier on, as the evolution of the types of storms changed, we went from that possibility of long track tornadoes to brief tornadoes on the leading edge of this line. You'll see where that one tornado warning that we're still talking to you about is in Clay County. But what I want to talk about is the types of storms before I get to an update. I mean, just look at this. Look at this line of storms that's going over the same location. These were the types of storms that we looked at earlier. And I know these are out of our area, but I just want to use them as kind of a case study of what we were worried about. Look at these tornado warning, tornado warning, tornado warning in a row. And that's the type of storm that this environment was set up for. Fortunately, it did not materialize, but I still think we're going to see plenty of damage here as we look at least at probably 2 to 3 tornadoes somewhere in our viewing area at some point. And what you'll notice now, still straight up and down. As we kind of have drawn on this before, it's a pretty straight line. And I know it's almost out of our area, but I can tell you, if you're in Mount Vernon watching here, the wind has picked up. I'm sure it's gusting about 70 miles an hour with some smaller, maybe pea-sized hail as well here. But that tornado that was in Steelville and Chester that we talked about that I didn't really see the signature on, that's been allowed to expire. You don't see that. It's still windy, but what we're also looking at is that significant wind in Mount Vernon. Like I said, it's still not out of the question that 70 to 80 mile an hour wind a few thousand feet above the surface is mixing down below. And as we look at that one tornado warned storm, now it's north of Florida. It's in the intersection of 50 and 45, and it's this area right here. We start to see that. Also, I still mention that I still think it's not out of the question here that we have that, but that's almost out of Clay County as well, so I'm not sure that they're going to particularly extend it because of that. But it's this area that has the most significant wind, and while I don't think that maybe this is backed off from a wind standpoint as well, that was the other side of it that I had queued up. That's at 45 miles an hour. Excuse me, but what you're going to see is this blue area here, this blue area near Flora, and then that little bit of an inlet here, and that's once again, that's where I think the most likely scenario for any sort of tornado is at this point, simply because as we're dealing with that last storm system, we still have significant wind behind it as well. And I'll take this out on a broad perspective here to where you can see this here from Mount Vernon, and it's that leading edge, that last little spot here that's creating a few issues here where we have winds that are gusting upwards of 70 plus miles an hour. It's not out of the question here, but still, we're under this tornado watch until 11 o'clock. This last area, this is still part of our coverage area in Clay County until 8 o'clock. It's a little small area, but it's still, I think, a pretty significant thing, and it's not one of those tornado warnings that we've seen where I say, well, you know, this may not be there anymore. I think it's very well there as we see wind gusts in Mount Vernon upwards of perhaps 70 miles an hour as they get back to covering that thing to the north that we still have that tornado warning in place for. And with each scan, we still see bright blue here that's probably indicating maybe between 70 to 80 mile an hour wind is possible. And some of that rotation here lowering and still impacting areas in Clay County here for the next 10 minutes or so. So this is what we want to paint a picture and talk about the specifics here. And then you'll just look at that new scan that we just got. Same type of thing. We still see no weakening whatsoever here from north of Florida, where we have the wind has probably significantly picked up even behind that. So even if you didn't see a tornado right now in Florida, what you're noticing is the wind is significantly picked up, where gusts of 60 to 70 miles an hour at the very least are being picked up and materializing. And that's all the way down 44 from Blair all the way to Flora, where the wind is going to start to pick up, and still almost out of our area completely. We understand that, but this is a significant enough threat that we want to make sure that you're safe here at this point, as we have significant wind threat here. That's the only notch, that's the only area for that tornado warning that's still in place for another 10 minutes or so. So those are the main areas that we look at in terms of that. But and now they've just kind of downstreamed that specific same spot until 8:15. And I think that's something Scott's going to take a look at here. Scott's got the latest timing and track on that, as they still kind of nudge that small polygon just a little further here into Clay County.
Put a new warning in on this, as you know, it's pretty clear and evident that we have that circulation there, and it's pretty evident that we do in fact have you know, a possible tornado, but we definitely have the strong winds. Looks like it's just north of Florida right now, so they've extended that warning over beyond the Clay County line, going farther to the east. So that's the area of our focus right now. And again, you're still looking on the north side of this at some pretty intense hail up around Louisville, and then you've got that circulation. And it's pretty close here. It just looks like it's off to the northeast of Flora. And it looks like it went to the north, the circulation went to the north of the Walmart there in Flora, but still you've got a lot of strong winds in and around the Flora area right now. And I would be surprised if you don't have power outages in this area happening over the next few minutes. Kind of look off to the east here. This is tracking towards Dietrich Blacktop Road, which is between Clay City and Sailor Springs. And of course, that's Sailor Springs Road. But all along here, you're going to have strong winds in addition to the torrential rainfall. This tracks off to the east through these farm fields, and then it will move out of Clay County and out of the 5 on your side area. But in the meantime, if you are east or northeast of Flora over towards Sailor Springs, Clay City, you need to be in your safe spot now, inside, away from windows and doors. Again, the indications are that the winds in this are just huge. This tornado warning's in effect until 8:15, but we'll get done with it in Clay County a little sooner than that, and be finished with this severe weather. But you can expect some significant power outages with this system as it's moving through. We're talking winds 60 to 70 miles per hour. The ground, again, has been very wet across our region, and as a consequence, a lot of the trees will subsequently fall faster. They'll just literally be uprooted versus being, you know, stripped or branches broken. They can literally be uprooted easier with the ground being so wet. So this is where we think that circulation is, kind of in this area around County Road 1550 over towards Jasper Road, Heather Lane. Again, we are off to the northwest of Clay City. We are off to the northeast of Flora, and this is the storm that has prompted the Weather Service to issue that tornado warning there for this system, as we continue to monitor it as it slides on to the east. So that's your only and final tornado warning. We still have severe thunderstorm warnings farther to the south, but they're pretty much getting out of the 5 on your side area right now. And I think that's the trend that we're going to continue to see as we head through the remainder of the evening. Clay County is our focal point for where we have any damaging winds happening right now, and Clay County is the focal point where we have the tornado warning, and it's especially true for the area just northeast of Flora, just northwest of Clay City, and in this area between Clay City and Sailor Spring along Dietrich Blacktop Road, Gary.
Yeah, and we still look at that, and, you know, just to further hammer the point that our threat is winding down, not only in many other spots, but in Clay County as well. But still, look how many areas that are removed from that tornado watch now. We're almost out of it, right? So you're going to be able to go to bed and be just fine, other than some rain. But it's this notch right here that's near Clay City. And just because the radar's behind, if you have not taken shelter in Clay City, I'd like you to go into interior. You have a basement, storm shelter, or even the bathroom, a spot without windows. Get as many walls in between because the wind's really going to pick up here. It's that circulation that is responsible for the tornado warning. And even as we look at that right now, I mentioned that just because of the way technology is, it's still a minute or two behind with the radar scan by the time we get it. So it's pretty much in Clay City, and that's that tornado warning. 7:56, like I said, so it's a minute away. It's probably already there right now to some degree, or starting to pick up. So I'd like you to go in there. And then at the same token, for everybody else watching from home, that pushes that till about 8 o'clock. So in reality, I think we got 5 to 7 minutes that we're going to be bothering you here as things are winding down, as the tornado threat is out of here everywhere else but Clay County. So as we monitor this, I still want to look at the significant wind threat, because that is still this shaded area in blue, and as it gets closer to another radar, this tells us that there's probably more likelihood that this is occurring even at the surface to some degree, and it tells us it's about 80-mile-an-hour wind just slightly above the surface. So as that's most likely mixed down below the surface at about 70 miles an hour, there are still issues that are created. So that's what we're looking at. There's still some wind behind that, but still, the main story for us right now is this tornado warning that's still in place. As a county, it goes a little further until about 8:15, and you'll see that here. As I mentioned, there's still a spot to the north that's involved in that tornado warning as well. So like I mentioned, I think there's, you still see this tornado warning in place until 8:15, and that's this wide area right now that goes all the way here away from Clay City. And I think if there's a tornado occurring right now, it is in Clay City. You'll see this little S here, and that's where we're looking at right now, because as we continue to monitor the trend of this out of the area, you'll notice the velocity data is just a little behind where the radar data is, right? So to me, that's what I'm looking at here. If I go flip back and forth, watch where my hand is, right? You can tell where that is. Now it's caught up. You'll see that circulation here. And where we see that in Clay City, I think right here, that's where the wind is most significant. I think that would probably be, based on looking at this, I think we're seeing those winds gust up to perhaps 80, 90 miles an hour. It's not out of the question, a few thousand feet above the surface. But then you'll see the red here. That's away from the radar. That's toward the radar. That burst of wind, I think this is actually, honestly, one of our more significant circulations that we've seen in a while, in a couple of hours, and we see that now. You'll see this little S here. That is the circulation that's responsible for this tornado warning, and I know that it's almost out of our area, but this is a pretty impressive circulation where we have the potential for 90 to 100-mile-an-hour wind in some cases, just because of the way the radar data is, just because of the way the situations thousands of feet above the surface are, the atmospheric conditions that we've seen all day. That's where I think that we have probably an active tornado warning going on, or active tornado at this moment, just based on what's going on radar-wise. And as you look at that S, and I think that's probably, Scott, right where we're looking at. And I know that it's almost out of our area, but that's the area where I think we have the most significant winds right now. South of Clay City on 50, there's wind north, but it's not maybe associated with that circulation, where you're starting to see this deeper shade of red that's fully almost crossing the county line now, which for some of you means you don't have to watch us anymore, and you're tired of seeing us. That's fine, but we want to make sure we keep Clay City safe, because if you're just listening to this falling on the stream, the same token is, I think you got about, I would like you to be in your safe space for about 10 more minutes, and then I think things will wind down from a wind and tornado potential perspective. So as we continue to look at the most recent radar scan, you'll see this little S right here, and what that is you're seeing the inflow here of wind coming in right about here, and then the other side of it is the wind is here, and that's the twisting that is created. Wind is strong behind here. We have inflow, and that's where we have that potential tornado, Scott, as it works its way out of Clay County at this moment.
Yeah, we've got about another 5 to 7 minutes. You see they just trimmed up that warning. So the warning's still in effect for far eastern portions of Clay County. It is almost across the border, but we suspect there's some wind damage back here. We know we had reports from emergency managers along US 50 as it came out. 50, of course, is the highway that goes from Salem over to Flora. As it came out of Marion County and into Clay County, 60 to 70-mile-per-hour winds were observed with this. We've had the winds reported, strong winds reported across Clay County. We had them reported along Highway 45 there. Flores had the gusty winds. The power outages usually come in a little bit after that, but this is where we're still tracking that potential tornado here in this area. And at this point, I think we're going to continue for about another 5 to 10 minutes before this thing finally rolls right along US 50 and crosses over. There's the new scan and takes that circulation, getting it a little bit closer to the Clay County line. So it's moving. This storm system is continuing to move. The threat is continuing to shift east. Flora, you still have a heavy thunderstorm, but your winds are starting to diminish somewhat in that area right now. In fact, when we add on the velocity here, you see the spot we're really focused on is that circulation there. And they have put up a new severe thunderstorm warning for much of central portions of Clay County to include that area up towards Bible Grove to take into account the fact that you still have the gusty winds behind this potential tornado and that circulation that's almost across the river and out of Clay County. Almost, but not quite. So still be in your safe place here. What we've been able to ascertain from spotters, from the emergency managers, from power outage information, that there was an apparent, we've seen video of an apparent brief tornado around New Baden, Illinois. That would have been one of those quick spin-ups. Clinton County in Illinois, over 4,000 customers without power at this point. That kind of leads the way for the Illinois side, but there are many other counties that still have several hundred, if not a few thousand, without power. And on both sides of the river, we're looking at about 20,000 customers that are in the dark right now. And because these power outages aren't concentrated in one spot, they're scattered all over the place. And because it involves tree damage in many cases, it takes the power companies a while to get out to assess the situation. Then they have to safely clear the trees and clear the debris before they can get the lines put back up and things back into place so that the electricity can get back on for everybody. Our imminent threat right now is rolling here right along Highway 50 here as we go over into portions of eastern Clay County, and that's where right now you are seeing that tornado warning. That is just off to the northeast, it looks like, of Clay City at this point. And so it's almost out of Clay County and continuing to track on to the east. Now, we still have some stronger winds behind that circulation that we'll have to deal with, plus you're dealing with the rainfall. But in the metro St. Louis area, our severe weather threat has come to an end. The rain will eventually end. Frank Cusimano tells us the Cardinals are now set for an 8:40 start this evening against the Cubs now that the rain is pushing out, Gary.
Yeah, and I wish it would have waited a little longer so we can watch a nice 10:30 game. But, you can see the Tornado Watch being trimmed still county by county. Our last little spot in Clay County is involved in that. You can really start to see this now. And I think most of this has almost moved out of the county line. But this is where, like I mentioned, you'll see this inflow here. This is probably the most significant looking storm since the one that we saw across the river earlier, where we actually had the tornadic debris signature. And I'll draw a better line, and you'll actually see the most recent radar scan as that pushes through Clay City. So that tells me that I think the likelihood of the tornado still being in Clay County is probably low. But I'll mention here for the next couple of minutes, because as I watch my hand and how the velocity data doesn't catch up as quickly as the radar data does. And that's why we often tell you, take your shelter sooner. Technology doesn't always catch up to each other, and oftentimes we get those reports, and that's why we rely on your reports as well. But like I mentioned, I still think this area, see, they're caught up. And now I think we're good in terms of if you're in Clay City and you're following this along for now, this is where I think we're seeing, the wind threat is probably the most significant now as we look at this wind still behind us at about 70 to 80 miles an hour. In terms of tornadoes, I think that threat is starting to wind down. I still think if I'm in Clay City, I would still stay in your safe place just because of the wind threat. But from a standpoint of a tornado threat, I think the positive for us now is that is working its way out, Scott. And wouldn't you agree that we're trending on the back edge of things now in terms of getting everybody back to normal here?
Yeah, definitely. I think our threat of severe weather really winding down. We still have some issues with water problems. You still have those strong winds, but the circulation has pretty much moved out of Clay County. So I think our severe weather threat for Clay County is, while there's still gusty winds there, we're not looking at that tornado threat in Clay County. It is now shifted east into Richland County and away. We still have the heavy rain here to the southeast of St. Louis. We still have substantial power outages across portions of Clinton County at this point. Probably the greatest number of power outages in the Metro East or on the Illinois side so far is around Clay County at this point. But we've also had upwards of 12 to 15,000 customers without power on the Missouri side of the river as well as these storms work through. We are wrapping up our coverage here of these storms as they're pushing out and as this tornado threat now is shifting away. Is the Indy 500 still running? Do we know?
Scott.
It's over.
I got no idea.
Sorry. We were hoping they were going to get into a rain delay as well, but we don't know. But the Cardinals will hit at 8:40 tonight is the game plan for them. And we're sorry we had to take out the Indy 500, but as it is, tornado threats are more substantial, more significant. You are watching 5 on Your Side. Well, they did 500 miles really fast if they just started.